Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Logical, Plausible, Probable. I'm your host, John Maddox, and tonight we're having another stream you just won't want to miss. If you got what it takes, click that link, but prepare yourself, for this arena is not for the weak. Now, let the mental combat begin, but always make sure your arguments are LPP. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. How is everybody doing this amazing day? It is tax day 2022 for those of us here in the United States. I got mine filed this morning. It's great relief. Return got accepted, etc. So having a little bit of relief on dealing with all that madness, but then had some adventure later on in the day, which we will cover here momentarily. But before I do, everybody, looks like, where did that go? There we go. Ray says, please, I need prayers. My 8-year-old grandson is in the emergency room and has been diagnosed with diabetes. So Ray will definitely make sure to pray for your grandson and hope that the doctors will be able to find out ways to treat him. And that's, there's so many amazing new discoveries we're having on a daily basis. They're starting to be able to treat so many of these diseases, and hopefully we'll get good reports here soon. Please keep us abreast of what is going on with your grandson. Give a big shout out to some of the members. We got Keith Colvin in the house. I think I saw Utopia Buster, Evidence and Reason Sal's here, Mountain Hours, Redefine Living in the house. What's going on, Sam? How are you doing? Andrew Kaufman, another member, is here as well. Appreciate you. And Wesley Coleman's in the house. Stephanie's here. How y'all doing? Well, there we go. The one and only Bubblegum Gun is here as well. What's going on, man? How are you? Okay, so the catalyst, shall we say, for tonight's debate or stream conversation, whatever it turns into, stems from a video I did a long time ago. Let's see, almost a year and a half ago now. Where I was calling out Wannabe Dave in relation to him talking trash about Dr. Tour and all these different jokers who, claimed he didn't understand abiogenesis, wasn't qualified to discuss the chemistry, etc. Well, anyway, this one video I did kind of edited together of calling out Wannabe Dave in relation to who is actually more qualified, because that's obviously one of the biggest talking points from all the Evo atheists on YouTube. It results in lots and lots of entertaining comment threads that just continue to arise. And today I got one. I don't know if it topped them all, but it's definitely up there, ladies and gentlemen, with some of the most entertainment I have ever had. And before I dive into it, as you may have seen, I think I pinned it. Maybe I didn't. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Okay, so there's now a side chat pinned for Samuel. So assuming he arrives and shows up, the link is there for you to join backstage and to us have some conversation, and hopefully you can explain to me why, since I know I don't know about RNA world hypothesis, and therefore am just, a layman spewing a bunch of bovine scatology about this topic. And since that's the case, I want you to come in here and maybe you can educate me on what the RNA world hypothesis is, and then we can get into it, and you can use your much greater knowledge and intelligence to communicate to me why all this stuff is just, a result of staggering ignorance and such. But hopefully he'll show up. Said he would, but he is at MIT, and it may be past his bedtime, but we shall see. Okay. Sal's backstage. What's up, Sal? How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I couldn't resist. I love the title of the talk, and it's always great to see you, LPP. I think about you throughout the, when I think about just a lot of things in the business world and ID and Christian testimony, you come to mind.
I appreciate
I'm sorry,
that.
I passed through Nashville twice in the last year, and I've missed you twice. So sorry, brother.
That's all right. Well, next time you come on through, just hit me up and we'll swing by and grab some Nashville hot chicken or something on the way.
This whole thing about qualifications, it's like, all right, do you, none of the critics of creationism or ID, I'd say, well, you can't criticize ID or creationism unless you publish in it. And so the fact that James Tour hasn't published in Abiogenesis, it's like, okay, if you apply that standard, then the evolutionists can't be criticizing young Earth creationism until they publish in our peer review system. So,
well, we do live in a world of double standards, Sal.
Yeah.
So until you just accept the fact that there is a double standard, I don't know what to tell you. It's just not.
And they're clowns on the internet. One of them's a high school dropout who's burned out his brains on drugs and alcohol, and I have 5 science degrees. And I'm just like, okay, I don't think you have a right to criticize me. Do you accept that? If you're going to apply the same standard that you do to James Tour, I'm just going to point that out. So,
well, what I'm about to unveil, and I'm hoping this dude show up because he said he would. So we shall see. But so let me share a screen real quick. We're gonna get, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get some entertainment. Because, those of you who've followed my channel for any length of time, I usually don't. Actually, I don't think I've ever done like a full, just go through comments before, just for the level of stupidity and entertainment that's available to it. But this one, I just couldn't resist, folks. It gets good. Okay, so let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, do you see the difference between Dave and Tour, though? One of them is citing papers in support of their ideas. One is using information from people who they admit as more knowledgeable. I don't give half a shit if even a middle schooler is presenting the facts, if he's out here reading papers, showing interviews with the writers of the papers, ... Okay. Okay, so let's get to my response here. You can obviously tell we're already off to start with very high-level conversation here. Okay, so yeah. So thanks for proving beyond doubt you've probably never read any of the articles written by Dr. Tour on this, nor watched the 12-episode series he did on the topic where he reviewed papers, not watched other reviews by... nor have you watched other reviews by PhD biochemists who have commented on his misinterpretation of the same papers you're referring to. It's amazing how so many YouTube haters are just complete idiots. Now, this is where it gets very good, folks. Pay very, very close attention for the utter obliteration that I'm about to take. It is embarrassing, and I should never do a live stream on YouTube ever again. There we go. Quote, "Hi, let me introduce myself. I am the head of the biology department at MIT. Ooh, I stumbled into your videos after a student directed me here following a lecture on the RNA world hypothesis. Dave has demonstrated that the work cited by Dr. Tour are misinterpreted according to the authors or said papers. I'm assuming of said papers. As you said to me, maybe you should read the papers." My response to Samuel: "Congrats on your position. Did you read the papers and have you watched the 12-episode series I mentioned? If no, then you don't actually know whether anything is being mispresented or..." And then I followed up about 30 seconds later because I decided to see, man, this guy must just be an incredible level. If he's the head of the biology department at MIT, one of the most prestigious academic institutions in the world, man, I might want to interview this guy. I might want to have a conversation. Maybe it would be worthwhile for me to be a little bit more diplomatic and to, extend the olive branch and say, hey, man, why don't I be a little bit less aggressive with your aggression, and let's see if we can reach things. Okay. However, Samuel, I just looked you up. MIT has you listed as a potential graduate in 2025. Are you lying about your position? If no, send me a link to your listing on MIT Biology Department website. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he is not on that website. And irony of ironies, right down here, he says, "Nah, I'm just lying to you because I knew you'd reply. Most people don't even bother to search before actually doing any searching. I still read the papers since they're often cited. I'm double majoring a direct to master course in physics and neuroscience." I showed Dr. Yours, typo there, videos to one of my professors, Eric Lander, who spearheaded the Human Genome Project. He said James Tour has no understanding of basic probability. Interesting. Speaking with my math teacher for probability, Philippe Rigolet, he also said that Dr. Tour's probability calculations are poorly done and show little to zero grasp of statistics. My goodness gracious. I don't even know what to say here. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the probability calculations done are rather A, they're straightforward, and B, those numbers are not really challenged by, I think perhaps that your professors should go take it up with H index having 224 Eugene Koonin at the NIH and tell him, for example, that his translation factor calculations of 1 in 10 to the 1018th power are just way off. Because perhaps H index having 224 Eugene Koonin does not understand probability, or any of the other well-recognized Nobel Prize winners who have done very similar math and have all come to the exact same conclusions in relation, or very, very, very similar ones to these different probabilities. Anyway, let's continue. My response, Samuel, so let me get this straight. You straight up lied and are now claiming your professors have actually been fully informed regarding the positions taken by Tour. Somehow, I highly doubt that. Okay, so his response back, this is actually, I think this is in response to my, I'd said something about doing a stream or something. He says, no, because I'm going to college, which might be unfamiliar to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I always get so much entertainment from the mental children that are Evo atheists on YouTube. I mean, this clown show who has lied about being the head of the MIT biology department is now suggesting that yours truly doesn't understand what it's like to go to college. I mean, I can't make this up, folks. I really can't make this up. I mean, hey, it's very unfamiliar to me. Going to college, very unfamiliar to me. I don't even know what to do. So I responded back, I already graduated from college and built a business. It's so funny how children like you think because they're in college right now, that somehow means they're superior in some way. It's also amazing how many big talkers like you don't have the CO Jones to come back up their BS. Really, it's hilarious. Okay, so let's scroll down here. He says, ugh, fine. I'll come on your live stream. When is it? So I responded back, we'll probably be around 9:30 Central Time. And it's a little bit later, got stuck in traffic. Although I know you're on Eastern and in college, so that might be past your bedtime. Now, so we have the guy who has just previously mentioned that I might be unfamiliar with what college is like. Okay. And then having been to college, I'm aware that most people stay up past 9:30 Central Time or 10:30 Eastern. If he's going to MIT, which would be in Massachusetts, therefore he'd be on Eastern Time. Therefore, it would be 10:30 for him, 9:30 for me. But hey, for an adult in college, that shouldn't be past his bedtime. So you would think that individual who is not a mental child would recognize that that is sheer sarcasm, and I'm expecting that he would be mad enough to be up that late. So he responds like, whoa, trying to interview me and already throwing cheap insults. So what's funny is I invite you to come on to back up your CO Jones. You now look at this as somehow me like begging your maybe freshman, sophomore, probably sophomore ass to come on and back up your bullshit. And you think I'm asking for you? Okay, that's very funny. Let's scroll down a little bit further. Now he says, I'm curious, do you know what the RNA world hypothesis proposes? So I really want to have that conversation with Samuel, and hopefully he can explain to me the RNA world hypothesis, because I clearly am uninformed. I don't know what it means, and it's a little bit over my head. And, I hear there's these things like, activated nucleotide sides, something. I mean, I think there's some clay maybe. I'm really unfamiliar with the RNA world hypothesis, so I really hope that Samuel will come on and educate us. Anyway, then a couple minutes ago I said I'm almost home. Stream starts in 10 minutes. This link takes you backstage. So he has not yet shown up, and to my knowledge, let's see here. Let me check inside chat, see if this dude is. Let's see if he's here. Nope, not seeing any Samuel inside chat. We'll see if he shows up. But anyway, so that's enough of my little tangent. I'm very interested to see if this guy will show up and educate us all on the RNA world hypothesis. I don't know, Sal, what do you think about what you just read? I mean, I think that was pretty much a complete devastation of me. I mean, I feel very, very embarrassed right now at the utter annihilation that I have just received from an MIT student. Oh my Lord. It is just, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. What do you think, Sal?
That was very entertaining. I mean, you'd almost think that was a creationist trying to imitate someone because it was so bad. So I don't know. I get, I need to stay away from this because it's too entertaining, and I really should be doing other things. But I had a hardworking weekend, so I'm just chilling now. That was great. That was great of you. I mean, the moment he said I'm the head of the MIT biology department, I'm just like, okay, this is gonna be fun.
Well, I mean, it's like, okay. So, actually, right. So, I think that this kid is clearly epitomizing what you and I and many others have talked about for decades now. I mean, I haven't talked about it for decades, but people have been talking about for decades in relation to the level of brainwashing that's happening in undergraduate, right? Well, high school and undergraduate and beyond. But I mean, the level of, I mean, I can only imagine. I'm sure this kid he's probably, let's see, if he says he's doing a straight to master's, so he's probably gonna do what, a 5 or 6 year program probably. So if he's a potential graduate in 2025, that means he's what, maybe sophomore, halfway to junior, maybe level. Is that's probably pretty accurate there, Sal? In estimation.
I mean, the way it came across is just this isn't a bright thing to do. This is Jesse Smollett type antics, where you just posture and you pretend the truth doesn't matter anymore. And that's unfortunately starting to pervade the culture. It's like, it's more the shock value of what you say than whether it's true. And, this wasn't the culture I grew up in. This is now starting to become almost acceptable behavior. So that's kind of, when we're talking about, I'm sorry, I lost what you were asking me.
I was asking you in relation to if he's on a straight to a master's program that is projected to graduate in 2025, then that would put him at probably somewhere between sophomore and junior level status.
Yeah,
that's probably pretty fair.
Yeah, and he's going to learn real fast. Well, the thing is, I just looked through that and I'm just like, how much of this have you made up? Because you cited Kunin's paper, and he's like one of the top evolutionary biologists on the planet. He weighed into abiogenesis because, that he has obviously an interest in it. But then I put in a paper there that was in Nature Scientific Reports by Tamani or something. And then Dr. James Carter, who's a professor of biochemistry, talked about this. The RNA world's a disaster. I mean, if okay, let's just say he came here, what would we grill him with? I'd say, what's the probability? How long will the RNAs last? Do you have an estimate for that at room temperature? Because are you going to argue that this happens in ice? If it happens in ice, how are you going to form cells? I mean, this is just basic stuff. So if he showed up here, I'd say, okay, show me your chemistry. We're going to argue, what's the half-life of the nucleotides? What's the longest nucleotide you could form spontaneously? Because these were in the papers. I mean, he wants to be grilled on science. He wants to try to educate us. It's like, okay, I'm going to just cite secular works. I'm not even going to cite like creationist stuff. We'll just cite the papers.
Well, and what's where we go? Well, and what's so funny about and this is, I'm having a brain freeze. What's the thing you talk about all the time, Sal, in relation to it's like a kind of a quote unquote law of it takes X amount more time to deal with the trash. Like Wannabe Dave's videos were 45 minutes long. Dr. Tour had to do 14 hours to overcome or to like explain it. What's that law, the quote unquote law that you talk, you know what I'm talking about?
No, actually,
it's not an actual law. It's like a joke of, it takes X amount more time to clean up the poop, basically. I learned this from you, Sal.
Really, I might know it by another name.
No, that's what I'm trying to ask you what the name is. I'm having a brain freeze on what it is.
I usually just say there are many more ways to break something than make something, and then also you have contamination.
Okay, maybe this might be it. Is this it?
Oh, Brandolini's law. Brandolini's law. It's called the BS asymmetry principle. So, okay, we're talking about discussions. So it took 20 minutes for Wannabe Dave to spew. It took James Tour, a world-class chemist, 10 hours to refute it. As far as the video, he probably spent at least another 30 hours researching this. So it's Brandolini's law. Yeah, Brandolini's law. And that's why I don't like the debate format, because the guy could just pull junk like that on you in a debate like Matt Dillahunty did on me. And I'm just like, okay, he'll start to, you give the impression you've won the debate, but everything they said was wrong. And it takes so long just to refute one point. I mean, just decisively show the guy just made this up. So, for example, a guy could come in here and say he's the head of the biology department. You need to take maybe half an hour just to verify the guy's just not telling the truth. And you can make a decisive case. But then in a short debate format, what do you do?
Well, what's pretty fun is, actually, in regards to this guy, it took me maybe 8 seconds or less to to disprove this clown show. Because let's see, MIT, there it is. Let me share this real quick, just for giggles of entertainment. Maybe this will teach somebody to not act like they're the be all end all and talk a big game. All right, so here we go, folks. Students, class of 2025. And let's do a little Control F. Actually, there it is, right there. There he is. Class of 2025. Bam. Oh, and by the way, also I did a little like head of MIT biology. and let's see. Oh man, still nothing. I'm like, man, if he's the head of MIT's biology department, he's guaranteed to have been indexed by Google. I mean, guaranteed. 100% guaranteed. Okay, so let's see now what happens if we just take away the name and head of MIT biology. Oh, there it is. There. Oh man. So that is definitely not that dude. Oh man. And really, there, I thought I was going to talk to the head of the MIT biology department. Oh, it's been ripped away from me. My dream has been stolen.
Oh man. Sorry to burst your bubble. And really, just also to be fair, there are people that impersonate. Someone may have just grabbed that name, and that might not really be the Samuel to whatever. I mean, I just want to give, if it is an imposter, I am concerned that we're not, beating up on someone that, there have been imposters impostoring other people, and
okay, that is true. That is true. However, I would say that this person came after me, not vice versa. Yeah. They're the one that initiated the impersonation, then admitted it to their lie, and also admitted that they are a student. So, I mean, that's just like, so many different elements of connection there. So hey, maybe let's say, hypothetically speaking, hey, the real Sam Takua or whatever, if you're being impersonated, come and prove yourself. But anyway, I think it's
yeah, because I'll just tell you why. I just don't expect someone that smart to do something that stupid. All right. I mean, being a student at MIT, you're going to be so busy doing real things than to be messing with that. So that's just my guess. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And if it's an imposter, I really feel sorry for someone's reputation being trashed. So I'm just throwing that out there just to be fair.
no, that's fair. And I would say that if anybody's reputation was being trashed, it would have been Alan Grossman. I mean, because this guy is not only is he attempting to hijack his title. I mean, what he said in the comments is so dumb that he's actually, mitigating the credibility of the real head. I mean, so I mean, and by the way, for all of the Evo atheists that are in side chat who suffer from the hyperliteralist disorder, in case you're missing it, I am being extremely sarcastic right now. Okay. I am not being, I'm having a good time and being humorous and sarcastic. Don't take this as literal. Drew coming. I see you in the side chat. Don't take it too literally. Anyway. Okay. So let's see. Some of you guys join us. What's up, Jamie? What's up, Andrew? What's up, Wesley? How you guys doing tonight?
Yeah. Just turning up for the posers, I suppose.
Well, good to see you. Jamie, what's going on, man? I haven't seen you on camera in a long time.
Just living.
Yeah, how's man, I have a brain freeze. You in Idaho or Montana? You're in Idaho, right?
Idaho.
So I heard, so I saw the other day that Idaho is the first state in America who has had a slight downturn in property values.
Not where I'm sitting.
Yeah. The overall, it went. They're the first state to show. I think the term was gravity, and property values dropped 0.04%.
Well, check out. I think it's Boundary County or Kootenai County, Koot, because property's gone up since we moved here like quite a bit. So I think it's gone up a lot actually. Quite.
Well, no. Is that not that it hasn't been going up? It was saying that
I'm sorry.
Just over the last month, just over this past month, like the month to month, it went down 0.04%.
Sorry.
And all I was saying was like, so the real estate market is just ridiculous across the United States. It's just dumb. And in Idaho, and part of the reason that Idaho is being used as the example was because it's been one of the most booming real estate markets in the entire country, with everybody from California and Oregon and Washington bailing, like Jamie Russell, right? Getting out of Dodge.
Yeah, that's why I'm so busy. It's right by. It's not far from a Sandpoint, which is a really great vacation place because it's got like sandy beaches. It gets hot like in the 90s in the summer, but it has snowmobiling in the winter with the mountains nearby, skiing. It's a really great place. In fact, there's a few high-end places, you can stay. So it's a good spot for like probably to try to do a appropriate like what do they call it? Where you rent out by the day or whatever. What do you call it? You know about it, John.
Something like short-term rental, Airbnb.
Yeah, Airbnb. Yeah, Airbnb, that sort of thing.
Yeah, get some Airbnb, some VRBO. Man, I tell you what.
Yeah. I want to make like treehouse lodges and top dollar to rent them out, but I think the insurance would just be insane.
No, actually it's not, because Airbnb and VRBO, they have insurance as part of their cut. So your house is actually insured while the people are staying in it.
Yeah, but trying to get a permit to do a real treehouse would be kind of hard. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't looked into it yet, but
it might be. It might be.
I'll tell you what, man. Look into it, because Airbnb money can be ridiculous. I mean, like,
yeah, what's good about it is there's skiing in the winter. There's the snow. There's going to it's right by the border to Canada, and then in the summer there's activities because there's several lakes nearby, like nice lakes. So yeah, it's a good spot. A lot of people it's their secret spot kind of Sandpoint. It's a cool area.
Well, it's amazing. When you get in the tourist market, man, it's amazing how much money they can be made off just the most random stuff. I've been trying to convince some rich dudes that I know here in Nashville. Pre-COVID, I was trying to convince them to pony up the cash to buy or actually anyone to buy one to lease a like badass yacht. And because here in Nashville, Broadway literally dead ends into the Cumberland River, and there's a huge dock like right there at the end. So you have 100 and something bars in crammed into a 5-block radius, right? And on the single busiest spot, you've got a freaking dock at the end. And I was like, man, I remember, especially these rich guys. I was like, listen, gentlemen, in Miami, people are paying 5 G's plus a night to stay in these yachts, right? I was like, we have the literal bachelorette party capital of the United States. And the number 3 spot, I mean, men go where the women are, right? So if the number 1 place for women to go party, bachelorette parties is in Nashville. The bachelor parties follow. Hello, this is like basic common sense, right? So here's what we need to do. You guys put up the cash to get this thing. And what we're going to do, we're going to hire a captain and all this other kind of stuff. And then think about this from a marketing perspective. You're a group of dudes coming to Nashville. There's women everywhere. Your clothes for the ladies at the bar is, hey, girls, I literally am staying in a gigantic yacht with a freaking captain, bartenders, the whole nine. Will you guys wiggle with me 3 blocks down or 1 block? Hey, literally stick your head out the door of the bar, look to your left. And if you see a yacht, yeah, that's where we're staying tonight. Would you ladies like to come back and party with us? Men would pay so much money for the opportunity to have that be your clothes. Hey, ladies, do you want to walk to the end of Broadway and hop on the yacht with me? It's a game over. Absolutely game over. Game over. Anyway, so
yeah, that'd be nice to be able to have like a, what do you call it, like a niche on the higher end, because that could pay, obviously, if you can bring that in.
Well, I know from like when I was Airbnb in my house, I know what people are paying to stay in my house, and also I know some guys that were renting out like some multi-million-dollar houses and some fancy neighborhoods and stuff. They Airbnb their Airbnb in their houses for like $2,500 a night. I mean, it's like if people go stay in a freaking mansion and pay $2,500 a night that's 15 miles away from downtown, they're sure as heck will pay that much to stay in a freaking yacht at the end of the bar, or sorry, at the end of the at the end of Broadway. Anyway, enough of my sidebar diatribe there. What's up, Wesley? Welcome to stream, man. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Yeah. I think it would be cool if this Dr. Allen, not a Dr. Sam would come into the stream.
Yeah, I would love to see him. I'd love to have a conversation. And by the way, Sam, if you do end up showing up, you're more than allowed. I mean, everybody can hop backstage. You and I can talk. We won't gang up on you. We can have a one-on-one conversation. You can educate me, and hopefully we can reach some kind of diplomatic conclusion to our interactions. But while we're waiting for that, hang on. Sal has asked me to share stuff. What are we going to be playing, Sal? I'm sharing my screen right now. If you tell us what's about to come on.
Oh, this is just a 1-minute video about genetic entropy and how an evil atheist confirmed it.
Cool.
So, Sal, have you been making things up again? Because we all know that genetic entropy does not exist.
It couldn't, or evolution wouldn't be true.
So there's a certain atheist who insists that humanity can find answers to life in atheism. He says there are answers in atheism.
All right. Oh, was that a little Freudian slip as to who the atheist is? Let's find, ladies and gentlemen, Sal is being very, very suspicious right now. Let's find out. Without further ado, here we go.
Thing. It could well be the best thing for the human race to get dumber and dumber until we lose our minds entirely. Thing. it could well be the best thing for the human race to get dumber and dumber until we lose our minds entirely. It could well be the best thing for the human race to get dumber and dumber until we lose our minds entirely. I mean, that may end up being the most reproductive, successful thing, right? But so be it.
That's it. Enough said. Thanks.
Well, the fact that these things continue to have to be addressed really fascinates me. I mean, okay, so one of my biggest sources of frustration and fascination with Evo atheists comes from the plethora of books that I read on a variety of topics, so different discoveries that are happening, and just how the abundance of discoveries that are happening, which just completely obliterate the plausibility of evolution from the conventional sense. I mean, it's just like we need something as basic as the enzymes that maintain homochirality, for example. And if you don't maintain homochirality, you're toast. We know that you're toast if you don't have this. Like it's guaranteed. And then just from basic chemistry, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Sal, but if you don't have those mechanisms which maintain chirality, you don't really have much fitness. And I mean, is that correct or incorrect?
Say again. I just missed it. I was reading the side chat.
Oh, I was saying if you don't have the different proteins that are required for maintaining chirality, then you don't have fitness.
You can definitely have compromised function. In fact, proteins will fail to fold if you start. I'll tell you. I think Rob Stadler pointed this out. Even the insulin molecule, if you change one residue, one amino acid to the wrong chirality, it's gone. It's gone. And this is actually easy to see for you biochemists, guys. The rotation, the angles of the molecules change when it goes from left to right-handed. Really bad. Everything's turned around in the wrong spot. So functionality is compromised. One thing I want to point out is I try to be careful about the use of the word fitness, because people, and I wanted to, emo is so like dense. I was saying, dude, there's a problem with the definition of fitness. And I found a paper by Lenski, because they keep wanting to cite Lenski. It says the genome's decaying despite fitness gains. So I use the word functionality. It's compromised. Because if the genome's decaying despite fitness gains, that means the evolutionary definition of fitness is useless.
Well, sorry to ask a quick question. So is the opposite also true? Like you can overdo it? If the fit, let me explain just a little bit. I saw this in Casualty the other day. If you don't take a break between, say, a workout, you will actually start to injure yourself as well.
It's fitness in evolutionary theory just means something other than what you and I or ordinary people.
Physical fitness. Okay,
It doesn't mean that. Yeah.
Isn't it like?
Okay, I'll give you a good example. You just saw when who answers in atheism was saying maybe the best thing for the human race is to get dumber and dumber and lose our minds.
I thought we were already there.
Okay, that's the evolutionary definition of fitness, and that's why I highlighted it. And just like people were getting on me and saying, "Oh, you're quote mining or whatever," I'm just like, why don't you ask him again? Do you think that that's the way fitness improves? Because I had a discussion, and when I got him to finally pony up his viewpoint, I couldn't stop smiling. I said, "I got you now, buddy." I mean, it's not unfair what I did, because that's what I think he thinks, and I don't think he's realized that this is just a disaster, the way to conceptualize what fitness is, because the way you just mentioned about being physically fit, it doesn't accord with evolutionary theory. In evolutionary theory, getting dumber and dumber until you lose your mind could well be being more fit, because you make more babies. And we happen to know there's good evidence that the human IQ is going down because smart women don't have as many babies. So here you have natural selection increasing fitness, but it's making us dumber and dumber. So
Like Idiocracy.
yes,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
that's what I was thinking about.
All I gotta say is, if anybody who doesn't think that humanity is not, anybody who thinks that humanity is not getting dumber is too dumb to be able to actually analyze whether or not we're getting dumber. I mean, it is just blaringly obvious at this point that we are.
Haven't you heard that IQs have slightly gone up overall? I've heard that too.
Well, no, they supposedly went up, and then peaked, I think, in what, the 1940s, 1950s, something like that, and then have been in decline since. I think I've been losing like I think that it's like 7 points per decade since.
It's hard to. I think they have trouble knowing exactly what intelligence is, because it tends to be that IQs stay the same from, you reach a point where your IQ gets as high as it's going to get, and it's kind of like genetic almost or something. It seems like there's a lot of different ways people want to explain it, and politics gets in the way of that. So from what I've seen,
I still hit 150 routinely when I sit those tests.
Well, it's not that they're. Go ahead, Tom.
They're objective measures for intelligence. It's correlated to speed of the nerves and your reflexes. They can, a neurologist can measure the speed of nerve conduction. Intelligent people have faster nerve conduction. So there are objective, rather than just testing, we have physiological means of detecting, improved or degraded brain function. And so a lot of these studies are, Dr. Dan got really upset when I started citing these studies, and he was protesting. I said, Dr. Dan, there's no one that's on your side that thinks that brain function is really improving or neurological. I mean, we're getting, there's an increase in autism and all sorts of mental disabilities. It's objective. There's no major geneticist I know of that thinks not just brain function, but overall that we're getting better. So anyway, I interrupted you, John. Sorry.
Oh, no. What you said was good. I forgot what I was going to say anyway. And yeah, I'm pretty sure what you just said was online with whatever I was going to say. So yeah. And by the way, the point you just made in relation to the measurable speed of neurological function, that's been known for a while, because I remember reading up on that years ago in relation to the fact that there was like the whole thing of, people calling people slow actually had been proven, of like they're actually people
like
that you
pudding.
Well, the people getting called slow, I mean, there's actually a reason for being called slow. Like they actually, I mean, it obviously doesn't across the board. It doesn't matter. Just because you speak slowly doesn't mean you're dumb necessarily, but dumb people usually do speak slowly, right? It's you live somewhere with a drawl, but if you get somebody from the South or whatever fired up, who's smart, they start talking real quick too, when they're pissed. And you got them.
Apparently 100 is what they set by an average. So it's hard to exactly tell over time if it's been getting higher, I've heard anyway, because essentially they take 100 as the mean and then go from there. So it's a population at a given time or whatever is set at 100. And so, have you guys seen that thing with Jordan Peterson talks about it? How like the Army did like extensive testing, and they concluded that if an IQ is under 86, I think it costs more to have those people enlisted in the Army. They're more of a danger than a help. And that's just what they didn't want to conclude that. He said it's just like kind of the case. That's just what the data said. So
you're totally right on that. And by the way, something very interesting to look at. There was a pretty interesting study that was done maybe 15 years ago on. Yeah, okay, so how there's like all the stereotypes of like dumb jocks and stuff. They did a study on NCAA students or student athletes, right? And what blew me away on this. So number one, the sport with the highest average IQ was in college was football. The lowest was baseball. However, the average IQ for football was 86. And that was the highest average of the three major sports. Baseball was 78. So when you think about this, you are talking about literal mentally handicapped individuals. From like, you're basically on the very edge of like functioning retard. I mean, and I mean that from the clinical term, not just an insult, right? And and basketball was like 82, I believe. But if that's the average, obviously you have some that are below, right? So some of the, and anyway, very long story short, I'm going all this is number one, it kind of justifies some of the stereotypes. But number two, when you really think about the number of stupid things you've observed, specifically in this context, men do, and it's like, if they're really that dumb, but they're being given all of this glory and accolades and told they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, all these different stuff, right? Growing up because you have a great athletic skill, right? But not much intellectual capacity. Then you're putting them in a college environment. And then we're wondering why so many of them do really, really dumb things, right?
What, like slam dunking?
No, I mean like smoking weed the day before their drug tests, like okay, so like I went to the University of Alabama, right? And this is in my days of debauchery, right? And I used to throw crazy parties. I mean, insane. There'd be 400 people at my house. I mean, crazy stuff. Anyway, there were multiple occasions where members of the University of Alabama football team were at my house doing crazy amounts of drugs on a Friday night when there's a football game the next day. And it's like, guys, well, I take that back. Not on the Friday, because they have to go like to the hotel and be locked down. I used to spend mine on Thursday night. So the 2 days prior, right? Well, sometimes they would make them do like impromptu drug tests between like right before the games and stuff, right? And it's like, what are you idiots doing? Like, you're running the risk of getting kicked off one of the premier, academic institution sports teams in the United States, and you're like smoking a joint before the game. Like, that makes no sense. And of course, in some cases, they let some of those guys that were like the stars weren't worried about it at all, because, and I won't say the guy's name, but I will say, quote, "Oh, somebody pees for me. It's no big deal." Close quote. Yeah. So those guys didn't worry about it, but the other guys who hadn't quite made it yet, it's like, you're risking this stuff. Like, whoa, my goodness. Anyway.
So the odd switcheroo, eh? Somebody else's, not mine.
Oh yeah, no. So, some of the guys that were stars, they weren't worried about getting drug tested, because I mean literally, somebody else's pee was what was getting tested, not theirs.
Well, they introduced that here at Sports in Australia. So yeah, we have on a professional level, they started introducing random drug tests.
So okay,
that outed so many people.
Oh yeah. So one of the other funny things, this goes back to the stupidity point I was making. So at least when I was there, I'm sure it's much more creative than this now. And anyway. So one of the ways that the good players got their spending money that they supposedly weren't actually getting was a Dewey Decimal System number would be slid under their door. And all they had to do was go to the library and find said Dewey book that matched up with said Dewey Decimal number. And there would be, depending on how good they were, there would be, a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 in cash inside of that book, right? Well, I cannot tell you how many there were dudes that needed help to go find a Dewey Decimal number and match it up. And yeah, so this is how so how I found out about this being the cash money was there was a dude on my floor who, and then my dorm, my sophomore year of college, he was like, "Man, can you go to the library, right?" Like, yeah. He's like, "Do you know how to find these numbers?" And like, yeah, you can like there's like a thing on the wall for him where you can like look up at the computer, like type in, would you help me? I'm like, okay. I'm thinking, at the time I'm thinking he's need a book to study or whatever. Oh, no. On the way, we're talking. I failed to find the book. He's like, oh, sweet, man. Check it out. Come on, let's go. I'll buy you some beer. And that's how I found out that's how they got their money. That was like the standard deal. Anyway,
I would have asked for a cut.
no, he bought me some beer, and it was good. And like I said, I was 19 at the time. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but that would be like a sugar daddy if you asked for the cut.
No, true. Well, of course, now with the name, image, and likeness that they're allowed to do, those guys they're going to be making so much money. It's going to be ridiculous how much college athletes are about to make, because it's now legal for them to get sponsorships and stuff. So anyway, enough of my crazy football Dewey Decimal System cash payout.
That's funny because the Dewey Decimal System is one of the most basic to actually get.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so straightforward.
So if somebody's actually struggling with that,
yeah, but you gotta think about it. Let's say one of these guys. I mean, okay, let's think about this. If somebody has for us, the concept of going and like figuring out where the book is that has XYZ Dewey Decimal number, it's not that big a deal, right? But if you have an IQ of 85, that's probably a challenge. Like a legitimate challenge.
Hang on. So lower number is a worse score and a worse position to be in. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Like so, as Jamie was saying, like 100 would be an average score, right? If you're, I think anything above above 120, you're in gifted, and then I think it's at 135 and up, I believe, is either near genius, and I think it's like 140 something.
150 they'll say is a genius. I've heard too. It just depends. Different ones you get different metrics. You really need to be tested by multiple professional people.
But then on the reciprocal, if like at 185 you're dumb. Or sorry, at 185 at 85 you're dumb.
85 you're dumb. At 185 you're really smart.
Yeah, at 70 something. I want to say it's like 76 somewhere in there. I think is like the official. You're mentally handicapped at that point.
Okay. Well, I'm mentally handicapped. Let's go another 150.
like I said, the Army concluded that they literally couldn't accept under 86, I believe it was, because there's not a job for them that wouldn't be a higher risk than not having them.
Wait, hey, Jamie, you need to stop talking trash about Utopia Buster.
It's not what necessarily makes you a valuable person or not.
No, he says. He said to pass the joint though. So, in with all this, by the way, folks. So something that I find very interesting. This relates to the overall like IQ question. So, there's been multiple studies on the nurture impact of IQ on IQ, and so for example. And this is where the whole 15-point thing becomes very interesting, going from like mentally challenged to gifted, right? Or above average is 15-point swings either way, right? So there's been multiple studies that have shown that breastfed children are on average 7 IQ points higher than formula fed, and children who have direct, basically their contact with their mothers from 0 to 5 rather than being put in like daycares and stuff also have about a 7 points higher IQ than kids that were stuck in daycare.
Oh, well.
So, but just between those two, just between those two factors, you're talking about a potential 15 point swing. And so now you've gone, let's think about that. Let's say you are either maintaining average versus dropping to well below average, or if say it's the reciprocal and you are now in the gifted range or well above average. I mean, that's a major swing. You're talking about a potential 30-point variance. That's massive when you really think about it on just two factors.
Yeah. Undernourishment can be just devastating. I mean, not just, formula fed, but just undernourishment, lack of care. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would make
I
sense.
didn't check the source really good or anything. It's just
Do they include having Asperger's on that? Because Asperger's people usually get higher IQs.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
That's
More
what,
neurons dedicated.
what I've heard in multiple studies. Which means that I'm already on 2 of those lists. I was breastfed as a kid. I was not in daycare. And I have Asperger's syndrome.
So is it a blessing or a curse?
It's
Well,
both,
I think
actually.
Yeah.
Well, in that context, one of the things I've thought about many times, I remember having a discussion with someone about this, some idiot, maybe almost 2 years ago now, who was going off on this whole tangent about how there's no way you could be there's no way that people in the past, like i.e. Adam, right, could have possibly have been hyper intelligent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to have any kind of social skills. And I'm like, so that it would be more indicative of overall devolution if, let's say, IQs were higher in the past, we had greater levels of intelligence, and also had the ability to be socially competent, right? If that was the case, then the fact that very often people now with very, very high IQs have an extremely hard time interacting with society. I wonder how much that some of that may stem from the fact that, they're so far out of the average person's range of the way they think and comprehend things that it may be very difficult for them to engage with the average person, which may lead to them shutting down, which is probably also very high probability. However, you think back, like if the majority of society was, the equivalent of a Newton or a Da Vinci, like they wouldn't feel left, like nobody understands what I'm saying kind of thing. And the level of potential collaboration would be almost incomprehensible for us now, right? I mean, if the average person was an Einstein, right? Think about all the things that would be discovered on a daily basis, right? We'd just be beginning to understand nature on levels previously unforeseen or even incomprehensible from our perspective. That makes sense.
They say he had an IQ of about 160, Einstein. In case you're wondering.
I recall that one. I do recall that one. It is a sliding scale. I mean, I've been in self-help groups for Asperger's syndrome, and I've seen people fail dismally at other things. And intellectually, I can say if it wasn't for the church, I wouldn't be able to come into these rooms and I wouldn't be able to socialize. So the church has that advantage as well. It gives you an environment in which you can actually make the mistakes, because when push comes to shove, that's just what Aspies do. They try and imitate people, and they'll imitate everything they see, and they will make the mistakes, and they will eventually forge a path towards an acceptance. But you're in your 30s or your 40s before you can actually start to do that.
So you're saying you need to have both a conducive, helpful environment as well as a time factor to be able to learn how to deal with the different issues. Is that kind of what you're saying, Andrew?
Yeah, pretty, but that's spot on.
Well, I think it seems like, especially in the modern era, we expect such instant gratification. I wonder how many people like those with Asperger's, like you, Andrew, I wonder if because the norm, quote unquote, norm in our society is, oh, you should just get this immediately.
Yeah,
and then
that's right.
Because not having that instant adaptation, therefore just become rejected or act like, oh, this person doesn't care, or this person doesn't try, versus actually attempting to try and help people and see things from that perspective.
It wasn't that long ago that they would just simply take a hook and you got to live to about 7, learn all the stuff you did, take a hook and scramble your brain and put you in a home.
Yeah. Do some lobotomies and such, right?
Yep.
Well, I think some of that also stems from the social Darwinism that was
Yeah,
so profound
I'm
back
not
then
saying it
too.
was good.
Oh, I'm not saying you're saying
I'm
it was good.
actually
I'm
saying
saying
it's bad.
no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I'm wondering. I think a lot of those actions stemmed from, at least over the past century and a half, stemmed from social Darwinism being so prolific in Europe and here in the States too, with all the eugenicists and such. It was oh well, let's either use that they're useless eaters, we can experiment on them, or hey, we'll just remove them from society. I mean, it's
Do you think that
it's documented that's what they were trying to do?
they try to say that some of those ideas are out of date? About it seems to me that there's a principle there with the way evolution works, where you really can't totally get around that being the logical outcome of social Darwin type ideas. It just seems like it's kind of denying the inevitable. If you, I don't know, I haven't thought about it very much or read about it, but it just seems like trying to keep everybody equal is not possible, especially on that paradigm, let alone any paradigm really.
Well, that's what John Dewey thought. John, what's his name? No, there's a U.S. businessman whose phrase, God did not see fit to distribute intelligence equally. Something along those lines. He opened up a bunch of department stores. I can't think of his name, but the quote's in How to Win Friends and Influence People, the book.
Yeah. Not everybody's gifted in the same way equally. All men are created equal. What does that mean? Status? Opportunity?
We're all created by God. We don't all evolve equally either. If evolution is true, we don't evolve equally.
Yeah, well, wisdom and intelligence aren't the same thing. So, character and morality isn't. I mean, really smart people get themselves into trouble.
And really dumb people get themselves into trouble too.
That too can be the case, but intelligence does predict better outcomes in life often, but it still isn't a guarantee of anything. There's so many factors, but
I'm still yet to experience that payday. So,
well, there's interesting. I forget the book was
the bell curve.
No, it's a play on wealth of nation, IQ of nations, and it shows the direct corollary between GDP growth, etc., and average population IQ, average IQ of populations by country, and how they correlate with each other. And there's also even in the countries where there's been a decline in IQ, so you can see GDP goes
that
down.
That could be not, causation doesn't equal correlation. It could be that economically rich countries are able to feed their populations properly, and so that causes higher IQ too. I mean, it's hard to know for sure exactly, but
or they're able to put them into positions in Australia, for example, we 2018 we started a recycling program. So basically 10 cents for your cans, bottles, and stuff like that. You could put people in that programs like that, and they can actually learn to get smarter from the sorting or driving forklifts or something like that. You can also put them into recycling computers, because that's big business now too. People who have disadvantages in finding, work in other areas, they can go into areas like this, and they just got to pull apart a computer and get the parts out and recycle the parts.
Well, what's interesting is that there's actually been studies on productivity in relation to IQ that show higher IQ people are really bad at repetitive tasks. I mean, really bad. And the not necessarily dumb people, but people with lower IQ are actually way more proficient and become much better skilled and are able to
coordination and that.
The level of productivity is dramatic. I mean, we're talking. I forget the exact numbers, but it's a significant difference. Bubba Gump.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I'm not much of a baseballer or a cricketer or a bowler myself.
Face of such a damn fine H. Christ. Why did you put that weapon together so quickly, Go?
You told me to, Drill Sergeant.
Jesus H. Christ. This is a new company record. If it wouldn't be a waste of such a damn fine enlisted men, I'd recommend you for OCS, Private Gump. You are going to be a general someday, Gump. Now, disassemble your weapon and continue.
I had forgotten about that scene. That's utterly hilarious.
Well, okay.
Hello.
I think some of the best stuff is the Bubba Gump shrimp. The types of shrimp is one of the.
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that's
sorry,
probably-
I fast forwarded. I didn't know. I didn't want
That's
to take
probably the best, the funniest scene of the whole.
That's part of that scene there.
Because he goes on about the shrimp for what, maybe a solid minute and a half, probably.
Deep fried shrimp. Yeah, shrimp salad, shrimp stew, shrimp gumbo.
Roast shrimp. No, he doesn't have that one.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I really wonder if a movie like Forrest Gump could ever get greenlit in the modern era. I mean, because there's so many factors in that movie. I think that all of the, holier than thou types would have.
How about Mrs. Doubtfire?
No, Mrs. Doubtfire would definitely get approved now. Like, no offense
That's
whatsoever.
I don't know. It's pretty. Actually, it's pretty. Well, yeah. That's.
Are you saying because
cross-dressing and woke.
Are you saying that because it was humor that instead of being like a.
It makes kind of
you're like making fun of them basically versus
yeah, there's a lot of that in there, it seems to me, but I get what you're saying too. I guess you could take it either way, but it seems like people are very serious about it, like that kind of movie just would be risky.
Brandon first, like recently.
What's that?
Trevor Graham is one of the weirdest Aspie people I can think of straight off the top of my head.
Not sure.
I know she has a bad rep, and I know they put her in American Dad when they put bad, weird people skits together. She's usually in them.
yeah.
Oh, wait. It's on the tip of my tongue.
So, Sal, Andrew is asking if you're still around. I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna be very prophetic. I think he is probably gonna want to talk to you about hierarchies and phylogenetic trees. Am I seeing this? Am I seeing the future, Andrew? Am I being able to read your mind right now? Is that what is on yours?
Yeah, I'm actually giving a presentation at the Creation Research Society for the alternative interpretation of phylogenetic trees. And it relates to actually work I've done with Joe Deweese on the K-modes algorithm and people that work on the AlphaFold predictions and direct coupling analysis. There's actually a hidden, since you love codes, LPP, we found a hidden code that if we look at biology, you can look at a pencil in water and think it's bent, and it's not. Or you could look at the planet's motions and stuff, and you can conclude we're either geocentric or heliocentric. And so you could actually have to, outside in metaphysical things, you can look at the same evidence and come up with two different scientific theories. In the end, one will prevail, like heliocentrism has prevailed. So, they've said the phylogenetic hierarchy is evidence of common descent. And I'll say, well, one, if the fossil record's young, that's out the door. So what's the pattern of differences and similarities? It looks like there's a code there, a three-dimensional code that you can only derive if you have samples from all the species. If certain species didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to do the full predictions of direct coupling analysis or parts of AlphaFold. And it looks like God has put a code in biology that only 21st century science can discover. the structure of that code results automatically in nested hierarchies. And so evolutionary theory got something else wrong. And that is a testable hypothesis. And it needs to be pursued. Random mutation or any sort of undirected walk will not generate this three-dimensional pattern. So if you have a three-dimensional, if you want to describe any three-dimensional structure, you take pieces of it. So like say, when you have a protein, you have like say 1,000 amino acids, or like topoisomerase that has around 1,600 amino acids. Each amino acid you can put an XYZ coordinate on. And that's how the protein data bank sort of stores it. A relative XYZ coordinate. Then you could see the shapes, all those curly shapes and all. What we can do is take sequences across species, run it through the direct coupling analysis algorithm, and then some additional algorithms. You can generate that 3D file. That makes no sense under a random walk, random undirected walk. And certainly won't make sense in terms of natural selection. And it certainly doesn't make sense that, wow, why did the plants have this particular thing? And if you remove the plants from your multiple sequence alignment, why does your protein fold prediction fail? So, you know, evolutionary biology explains the nested hierarchies, much like geocentrism explains the observations in the sky. It is correct on a few points, but then fails on others. Common design is the better explanation by far.
Right. Well, and the amount of weird anomalies they keep finding, the more sequences that get, or more genomes that get sequenced, the more variables they keep finding. And that's what always fascinates me in a lot of these conversations. It's like, okay, so the foundation of the premise was created from a very few, the initial, small number of genomes that were sequenced. And here, it's a sidebar on all this. A week and a half ago, the actual completion of the human genome sequencing got published. So in spite of all the dogma about the Human Genome Project, we've sequenced the entire genome in 2004. This is old news. Turns out we hadn't, and we hadn't actually sequenced the entire thing because of all the junk DNA that was ignored by all the EVOs. And now that we actually have sequenced the whole thing, we're finding out there's all sorts of important factors, including coding sequences, as well as repetitive elements, regulatory components, barcoding, all sorts of stuff in chromosomal barcoding, et cetera, that is in these quote unquote junk regions of the genome. And and we're finding massive differences, go figure, between the non-coding regions of organisms and the coding regions. So the differences, the major differences in genomes are in the non-coding regions. So as we learn more and more about the functionality in the non-coding regions, the similarities between genomes becomes less and less. And that's the part that irritates me so much that gets glossed over in all this. Case in point, we're supposedly 84% similar to a mouse, right? But if you look at the bigger picture, it drops to 9%.
Well,
so that's not even, at that point, that's not even close. And sidebar, Sal, you might find this very interesting. I wish everybody finds this interesting, but Sal, I don't know, you may know this already, but did you know that? So you know all the talking point of duplicate sequences equals crap design. So guess. Okay, so guess.
I knew that.
So guess what's been being discovered. Specifically, and for various reasons, but specifically in relation to not dying. You know how different genes will have multiple potential use cases? Well, it turns out that longevity of life has been directly tied in some instances, has been directly tied to having more than one copy of a particular gene. And for example purposes, this would be the analogy from the researcher I was reading from, was basically, if you only have one copy of this gene, then it's producing all these proteins. The proteins being produced from this gene are being used for situation A. However, if you're in stress scenarios, different things happen, emergency stuff, then if you only have the one copy, you're only being able to do the original function, or every thing that's being produced only can go deal with the emergency and cannot maintain the main use case of it. So it'd be the equivalent of, you've got your National Guard, right? And National Guard, let's say it's Florida, and there's been a hurricane, it's hit. National Guard comes down and is like helping with the hit area, right? Well, instead of them being able to go back to work or go deal with other emergencies, hurricanes just keep hitting, right? So the National Guard is constantly dealing with like helping rebuild from hurricanes, right? Well, at the same time, they're fixing, down by Naples, Florida, or St. Pete or whatever, and up in Jacksonville, riots break out. Well, because of all the hurricanes that have been hitting on the other coast of Florida, none of those guys can leave to go help with the riot. So Jacksonville burns down. However, if you had another division of the National Guard for the state of Florida, those guys could get sent to Jacksonville to deal with the riot, and the other guys could stay and deal with the hurricane damage, right? Well, they're saying it's the exact same equivalent that they're finding in organisms. If you have if you have, say, 2 copies of it, all the genes the proteins being produced from copy 1 are dealing with this problem, and everything being produced from copy 2 can be shifted over to deal with the emergency. And
they call that in the bacterial world, they sometimes call that modulation of gene expression by duplicates. So basically, you're building more factories to create it. So there's a point when only one gene can only make so many RNA transcripts. So if you have 2 genes and that one maxes out, because it takes time for a gene to express itself. If that's maxed out, then yeah, it makes sense to have a duplicate. Then you have 2 opportunities. So yeah, that makes sense. I have heard about that.
So they've now done. So they've now done like actual experimentation on this, and they've been able to quantify the increase or decrease. Like they'll different like mice experiments and stuff. They'll like knock out one of the copies, and life drops, right? Or if you have the extra one and put them in the exact same environment, and they last longer. Or take ones that don't have it, insert it, and life expectancy increase. I mean, it's pretty crazy what they've been able to prove.
And what's really bad is the duplicates in the non-coding regions. And I did a show on this on my channel, like the ALU elements. For the longest time, they said that's terrible design. It's not. So it's not just genes now. It's even the non-coding, because there's a lot of repetition in the non-coding elements. And for the longest time, evolutionary biologists were saying this is proof of stupid design. It's ending up being one of the most spectacular forms of design. Because this is just as dumb as saying, oh, well, look, all the transistors in a VLSI chip, and when you have a like server farm, they're all identical. Therefore, this is dumb design. It turns out these are computers. They're programmable RAM. There's a reason they're identical, and they can be modulated in real time in what they do. They're like chips. And just like, I keep hearing the same recycled evolutionary garbage that this is junk, and it's just laughable. It's like, you guys didn't actually do the experiments to determine this. And you're risking everything because you could be made to look the fool when we find out it actually is pretty vital.
Well, and in line with what you were saying there, Sal, in relation to the computational components, right? Have you seen the stuff on how they're realizing that DNA computation could circumvent the von Neumann bottleneck in terms of processing power? So I mean, that's one of the primary limits, right, of potential computation is the von Neumann barrier or bottleneck, whatever it's called. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute. If we were doing DNA-based computers, we could actually be, you're not having to go from the memory to the computation. It's one and the same. So you don't have that delay factor and that barrier to transfer because it's one, you do the computation and have the memory in the same element, which is kind of mind-bending when you think about it. And it would also, if that's true, then it would also explain, in my opinion, how the high speed of computation that we see in biological systems, it would make that much more understandable if that's actually what's going on. What are we seeing here, Jamie?
I was curious about telomeres because it seems like
telomerase function. The ends of chromosomes contain regions referred to as telomeres. These telomeric regions consist of telomeric repeat sequences. The exact sequence of telomeric repeat can vary from species to species. The repeat sequence shown here is found on telomeres of human chromosomes. Since DNA replication can only proceed in the 5' to 3' direction and requires a primer, it is not possible for a DNA polymerase to replicate the 3' ends of linear chromosomes. If this problem were not corrected, chromosomes would shorten with each cycle of DNA replication. The addition of telomeric repeat sequences by an enzyme complex referred to as telomerase assures that this shortening does not occur. Telomerase is a unique and interesting enzyme because, in addition to having DNA polymerase activity, it also contains an RNA sequence that provides a template for the synthesis of telomeric repeat DNA. Part of the RNA sequence hybridizes with the single-stranded overhang on the DNA strand, leaving a single-stranded overhanging RNA sequence. The repeat unit shown here is from Tetrahymena, which is the model organism used in telomere and telomerase research. The DNA polymerase function of telomerase then synthesizes a DNA strand complementary to the RNA found in the telomerase and subsequently translocates to the end of the newly synthesized strand, and the process repeats itself. Many cycles of repeats can occur. Once telomerase has completed its function, DNA primase synthesizes an RNA primer near the 3' end, and DNA polymerase fills in the vacant region. A short region at the 3' end will remain single-stranded. The end result is that telomerase will have added many repeat sequences from a few dozen to a few hundred. This prevents chromosome shortening.
I heard that one problem with doing research with mice is they realized that it was changing that part of the DNA or whatever. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but and so I don't know. Do they do a lot of comparative tests and stuff? Because like, how do you know? I mean, do they test one person over time and see changes and how much change, and then compare that to other people and to see correlations? It seems like there's so many factors to even try to study it or understand it. I don't know. So that you guys might have something to say about that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's complicated for sure. I tell you something that was very interesting in the book I'm currently reading on aging in genetics. They have now been able to, so we talk about like shortening of telomeres in correlation with age and all that. They have actually determined different ways that telomeres can be lengthened, which is very interesting. And this is also in conjunction with, and I went on a tangent about this the other day in relation to basically the immortality circuit that basically all organisms appear to have, but it seems to be turned off. And they're trying to find out they found different little hints of ways to kind of turn it on for short periods of time to basically mitigate aging, or in some cases reverse some aspects of aging, right? And to me, it's that whole thing of, and this goes back to evolution, right? Of if the equivalent of immortality is they're seeing it sitting there in all organisms, but it's off. But from an evolutionary timeline, that would necessitate it having been there from the very beginning.
That's a great point.
Number one, how from a fitness perspective does the immortality function not get naturally selected? Number one, I just want to know how, if it's all about fitness, baby, and we all have this, like, how are you going to tell me over a couple billion years, you're telling me that somehow there hasn't been some organisms that have
there's one or two
have the yeah, I'm saying if the same circuits are in genomes and they're seeing them in all these different organisms, right? Then are you telling me that somehow it's just remained off? I mean, just give it enough time factors and enough pressures, you would think that somehow a lot more organisms would have had that sucker kicked back on.
And it seems like it wouldn't then you get overpopulation, and then that wouldn't really seem to affect that mutation if that were the case, because seems like that would correlate with other fitness mutations, perhaps. I don't know, maybe not, but right, there has to be like a balanced population.
Yeah, but we have noticed, it's been observed that when populations start to get to certain high levels, there tends to be a relative plateau of replication, right?
Yeah, like they don't have as many children automatically, and the opposite is true too. To fill in,
and this is the other thing, and in line with your point there, right? So, and this becomes very interesting from the young Earth versus old Earth perspective too, right? So, let's say the Earth is young, right? And if the immortal genes, right, the immortality circuits were turned on, the planet is actually relatively empty, old or young, actually. Because I mean, think about this: you're in Idaho, right, Jamie? The population of Idaho is less than 1 million people, if I remember correctly, and I know like Wyoming, for example, is like 700,000, I think. I'm not sure what it is. I know Idaho's been growing. Let's see. Population of Idaho.
1.84 million.
Okay, so in the entire state, which has a surface area, let's see.
Yeah, there's a lot of land out. Yeah.
Okay, so the surface area of Idaho is 83,642 square miles. Okay. You have 1.78 million. Nashville, Tennessee, surface area is 526 square miles. And we have a metro population of 2.1 million. So let's just think about this in terms of population density.
Right? Well, it's because of Iowa for food. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, my point is that I'm talking about how full is the planet, right? So just in context, Nashville is not a population dense city. I mean, we're growing pretty rapidly, but it's not that dense compared to an Atlanta or Chicago, Boston, New York, etc. Right? But there's more people in the metro area of the city I live in than the entire state of Idaho. But Idaho is twice as big surface area wise as Tennessee. So
yeah, the square mileage is insane, and when you actually do the math, because of when you multiply it, it's like sounds like way more than you think it is. It's just drive across America and you realize there's so much land that's unpopulated.
Right, and this is why I go on my diatribes about like the overpopulation problems, right? Of if the population, I did the math on this a couple of years ago. The entire population of the planet occupies less than 3% of the entire surface area of Earth. So,
which is like inhabitable surface area is a very low percentage of Earth's too, I think, right? Is that right? Well, the water is 70%, but yeah, it's still crazy. It's only 3% of usable land, probably, right?
Right. Well, no, that's 3% of the land. If you think about it from the total surface area of the planet, it's like I think it was like 0.7% or something like that of the total surface area is where the surface area that humans are occupying, of the totality of the entire planet versus the land area of the planet. Anyway, my point is that if the entirety of the planet, or the vast majority of the planet, was actually habitable, right, then it's empty, right? We've got almost 8 billion people, and let's imagine if the entirety of like the Sahara Desert was not desert and was habitable, right? You think about Antarctica. Let's say Antarctica was habitable. North Pole. I mean, Siberia. I mean, think about. I mean, the surface. Canada.
Mountains,
I mean, heck,
deserts,
Canada is gigantic, but it only has like 28 million people that live in a gigantic. It's like 2.7 something million square
And
miles. Right?
they're all hugging the border. It's all hugging the border too.
Right. So my point is, if just the land that's currently available, let's say the water levels stay the same, everything, right? If just the land that's currently, above water, right, was habitable, the planet would be empty, and that's with 8 billion people on it. So this whole where are people going to go thing is not nearly as big a concern as people make it out to be. Again, if you're living in New York and you're like, the world is overpopulated, you're right. Your microcosm is overpopulated. I agree. Shanghai under lockdown right now, 25 million people. Yeah, you're overpopulated. Tokyo, 46 million, I think it is. Yeah, Tokyo is overpopulated. I agree 100%. But
well, have you seen the new studies that they've done on population? They say that it's going to top out at about 11 billion, and then it's going to, because of the way that different societies are being lifted up out of poverty, that there's a correlation every time with 2 children or 1 point so many children. In fact, there's more likely going to be not enough people now, really, to take care of the aging and sustain economies. It's interesting. I think the problem's flipping.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, well, there's major problems. I mean, I agree with what you're saying there, Jamie, for sure. And it's on the flip side, we have, for everybody, Sal and I were talking about this the other night, if people aren't paying attention to the food problem or artificially created food shortage that is coming our way. And the fact that the DEF, diesel emissions fluid shortage is coming, like, trucks and tractors will literally not drive if they can't get this stupid DEF. Since 2011, they manufactured them all to not run if they don't have the DEF. So you can have diesel in the freaking tank, but if you don't have the stupid DEF, the truck won't drive, the tractor won't pull. Or
it's like an additive or something, or what?
Yeah, and they have like sensors built into the engines and stuff now that if you don't have the DEF, it either won't let them start or will prevent them from going over a certain amount of RPM. So like basically they can kind of go maybe, but like not actually do their work basically. And that's a serious freaking problem. I mean,
I just paid over $5 for the first time ever for a gallon of gas.
How much? Man,
really?
And is that expensive in Idaho? Wow.
Well, yeah, it was a more expensive gas station, or maybe it wasn't $5. It was but nearly $5, like not $4.98 or something. I was just like, wow. A couple weeks
It
ago.
is amazing that though, and that is coming over into Australia because we're now paying. Last time I filled up, I paid over $2 for a liter. There's more in a gallon than there is in a liter, but yeah.
Okay, so you said you paid $2 a liter. So that let's see.
Yeah.
A gallon is like what, 3.8 liters, I think. So you're looking at, was that 730 somewhere in there?
As a direct conversion, it'll be about $4 American, I think, if you double it roughly.
No. Let's hang on.
It's saying, are you trying to convert here?
No, not just doing the conversion of the dollars. I'm talking to getting at the actual gallons and see how many liters in a gallon. I think it's 3.8. 3.78. Yeah, so 3.8. Okay, so, and you said it was $2 a liter?
$2 a liter. Just over.
It's basically 4 liters in a gallon, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. It's 3.78. So it's 3.8 liters in a gallon. And you said you paid 2, so
that's a lot.
That's 760 in Australian dollars. So 7.6 Australian to USD is $5.60 a gallon.
Yep, and my total tank was only about $13. So. But I'm only a scooter.
Yeah, and Joe's saying 180 a liter in the UK, but the the pound is what, like 130 to the dollar, I think. Somewhere in there right now. Let's see, what is G
That was weird.
pound to dollar right now. Let's see. Yep, I was pretty close. 130. So it's actually
Wow.
more expensive in England.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah,
Diesel's over $5.
it's not looking good, is it? Any wonder we're going for electric vehicles?
Good luck getting all the metal.
Ooh, man. Okay, so in the UK right now, they're paying $2.34 a liter. So times 3.
How much?
Ooh, man, England, they're paying $8.90 a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Brutal.
But England is also one of those countries that has the higher restrictions on the pollution stuff. So the take-up of EVs and the availability of EVs as well is on the take-up because of this. So,
but here's the thing. So as most of y'all know, y'all know, I was born and grew up in England, right? And when I moved back to the States, this whole like gas mileage thing here in America blew my mind. Because I remember growing up that there were vehicles that were getting 40, 50 miles to the gallon back in the 90s, right? And I remember coming back to the States and being like, and it was like, oh my goodness, my new car. It's like early 2000s, like cars, high-end gas mileage was getting like 24 miles to the gallon. New technology, new breakthroughs, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what the hell are y'all talking about? Like Europe, they got cars that are getting 50, 60 miles to the gallon, not hybrids. We're talking about like normal cars, right? And here in the States, all this BS about not having good gas mileage stuff. But of course, they're in the UK or Europe, they're driving mostly, Germany's are not, but
they're like mopeds with 4 wheels, man.
Exactly. Little dinky cars and so light, but
yep.
What do you think of that new Tesla truck? It's kind of weird, but kind of cool. They're going to have 3 motors on it.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not getting... Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, there's also another brand. Ironically, it's called Nikola. That's also got a truck out.
Yeah, well, they do, but that their CEO is in deep doo-doo right now because they made
a lot of those EV CEOs are in deep doo-doo right now.
Well, yeah, but this one in particular, they made some major promises to investors and
not happening.
False promises, basically. Like they presented themselves to be way further advanced than they actually were, and
they pulled a Rivian.
He's trying to pull it.
I am up on it.
And he couldn't do it.
Oh man. Okay, so Pure Aussie Gold says that cigarettes are $40 to $50 a pack. Are you serious?
Where, in Alaska?
In Australia.
Good.
Okay, so he said
taxes and all sorts of things, man. They're trying all sorts of things to get people off smoking. All sorts of things. They even play classical music at shopping centers just so that the young people won't smoke at the entrances. And it works.
Oh wow. Okay, so the average price of cigarettes
instead of Iron Maiden.
Okay, so the average price of cigarettes
instead of Iron Maiden, something like that. Yeah.
$27.95 is the average price for a pack of cigarettes in Australia. Wow.
That's for a cheap
one. In Seattle, they're about $11, I think. Don't remember, right?
Wow. Well, okay, so here's what's interesting though. We're gonna try and price people out of cigarettes, save their lives and stuff, right? Okay. By that logic, fast food should be illegal, and no added sugars should be allowed in any food in the grocery store. And
they taxed sugar, John, in Seattle. They literally taxed soda with sugary soda. It's taxed, and straws, and plastic bags at the grocery store. All that's taxed, so you have to pay for it on top of the store price.
They've been doing it in Australia for years.
Well, okay, but what I'm saying is like more people die from obesity and the different diseases that are caused by obesity than die from cigarettes. Like that is an unavoidable fact. And
alcohol will probably be close second.
Sorry, what was that? What did you say?
Sorry. Alcohol will probably be a close second to cigarettes.
Maybe, but what I'm saying, I would be willing to bet money that the deaths caused by obesity are greater than alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes combined. I'd be willing to make that gamble.
I'd be willing to, but I think there would be the ones they're trying to do more about. This obesity is not on the list yet, but it will be.
Well, will it? Because
it will be.
It's hard to define.
Yeah, but think about this. We currently live in a society where doctors are getting deep doo-doo for talking to people about being fat and get accused of fat shaming. And we have major magazines that are talking about it's the new normal. We have influencers who are literally making millions by like doing videos about how they are not about losing weight, but how they're getting fatter. Yeah, I mean, they're purposely getting fatter, right?
I don't think we should be able to tell people they have cancer either. Let's just tell them they're fine. I mean, we don't want to disturb them or anything.
Perish that thought.
Well, I mean,
anyway, sorry.
To me, when you think about like, okay, so 99% of diabetes cases, I mean, hope are caused by obesity, like as in adults, right? Not with kids, not in
type
kids.
2.
Type 2 are caused by obesity, right? We know this. The number one cause of amputations is diabetes. So like, let's talk about the cascade, right? Let's see. It's 40% of the most common, or 40% of the most common cancer strains are caused by obesity. So if we know this, we can cure 40% of cancer, like off the top.
How do you stop people from being overweight, though?
Well,
you get them to stop eating the fast food.
No. Okay, think about this. If the only food, if the only food that was affordable, if you taxed the hell out of chips and candy and everything else, right? And it was way more affordable to only eat fresh veggies, baked chicken, that kind of thing, right? And fruits and veggies were the affordable foods.
How progressive of you, John? How progressive?
I mean, I'm actually not suggesting this should be done. I'm saying that if you're going to tax, if you're going to apply the logic of we're going to tax people out of doing something that's detrimental to their health, right? With cigarettes, right? And people are like, oh yeah, tax those cigs, man. Get people to stop smoking and price them out of the game, right? Okay, well, by that logic, then why have you not done the exact same thing to alcohol? And why have you not done the exact same thing to chips and cookies and candies? And then why are you allowed? I mean, if you go in next time you're in the grocery store, look at the nutrition thing on the side, right? A little label. And your mind will be blown at how all these different foods you would never think would have this, all will say added sugars on the nutrition tab. Added sugars, right?
Sometimes it's deceptive, yeah.
And then at the same, after you look at those numbers, right, the number of grams and such, then go look up what they say, like WebMD, like what they say is the number you should have for an entire day, and your mind will be blown at how so many things in the grocery store which you would never think would have these. Like, for example, one of the ones that blew my mind was whole grain Ritz crackers. Right? You would think, oh, whole grain, it's going to be all healthy, all this kind of stuff. No, I forget. It was like 16. I think it was like 16 grams of added sugars. I'm like,
enough salt for the whole day, probably.
The
serving is 4 of them.
In the healthy Crackers, you got that much? And you look at some of the other ones that aren't considered quote unquote healthy, and it's like 25, 28. And that's in crackers, folks. You don't think that your crackers are going to be having ridiculous amounts of added sugars. Oh, wait, they do. You know,
Well, they have the same problem with bread too.
Maybe we could just say we're going to cut your head off if you don't believe, you know?
Yeah, see, Ray's talking about, he says, I'm diabetic. Trust me, I'm all too aware of how much added sugar is in everything. Yeah, it's
kind of a give and take with this sort of thing because, like, how far do you want to go? I mean, you know, it's the same thing with the when you know, the Inquisitions. It's like, well, we're trying to save souls here,
right.
You know, like how far do you want to go?
Well, no, I agree with you. My point is that we can't just cherry pick and all this kind of stuff. And then when people push back or say, okay, if you're going to go down X path, then you should apply the concept equally. And on the flip side, why are we not doing the amount of education that is, I mean, let's just be honest. There's a huge portion of the population now in Western civilization that is stunningly unaware of the dramatic ramifications of obesity. I mean, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many folks are just ignorant of it? It's like, because they're being told it's fine, right? It's the new normal. It's like, so you're almost guaranteed at some point in your life to get diabetes, type 2 diabetes. If you maintain this, you're almost guaranteed to get heart disease. You're almost guaranteed to gain some kind of obesity caused strain of cancer. And like, these things are almost guaranteed to happen. And you could mitigate that. Like, I don't know. It's the data is in on ways to help help. Anyway,
exercise is another way. So
they're trying. I mean, they are trying.
People participating in weekend sports again is going to save a lot of lives as well. But they won't do that because they can't play them because they're out of shape. And if you join a gym, you pay a fee and you don't turn up for 6 months. So you may go for 2-3 weeks and then stop. There are other problems, many other barriers that we've just got to get through.
Why didn't God just destroy Lucifer when he fell? Stop evil. Why does God allow gratuitous evil? Same kind of thing. It's like there's got to be some principle.
I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to why he didn't kill Satan. If he'd killed Satan, then Job wouldn't have been tempted. Adam wouldn't have been tempted. Neither would Eve. Would have been very handy indeed.
Yeah, there's got to be a principle in there somewhere. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to just kind of jumping to the extreme, but it's the same kind of thing. There must be a purpose, and should we model
that's something I can't get my head around. So let's just have to, and I'm quite willing to admit that I don't get my head around that, and I can't think of any Christian who has got their head around that one.
Yeah, if you think you do, you're probably in bad shape. No.
Yeah, I mean, why didn't God just wipe out Adam and Eve at the same time? You know. Or wipe out Cain at the time Abel was wiped out, you know. Anyway.
What do you, I wanted to ask you guys something. Do you think the lack of human skeletons in the fossil record is a bigger problem for young Earth or old Earth?
Well,
on their model, there should be how many people who have lived? 200 billion, they say, or something like crazy. And then for us too, though, with the flood, it's like, where are the human skeletons?
Okay, so I would say for the Evos, the lack of skeletons is a much greater problem. Because if you assume that humans are going to be the most likely to survive the longest, and are going to therefore be much more on the surface, they drown on the surface rather than get buried, then the likelihood of decay and not being fossilized is much greater. Because I mean, the fossilization necessitates being quickly buried, right? So if you assume humans are going to be trying to get to the highest place, right? Like we know that all humans that we observe, like if you know the water's coming, what are you doing? You're climbing on top of your house. Right?
Especially if we know the preservation is so amazing now.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, on their model, I mean, dinosaur bones can last for,
Oh, yeah. What I'm saying is, like, if the probability of human, okay, so when Nashville flooded, right, in 2010, it was nuts. It was crazy how bad the flooding was, right? And there was a few deaths, but not that many. And lots of people were, climbing to the top of their house and stuff, right? Sitting on their roof. And we see that in every single, when New Orleans flooded, when Houston flooded. I mean, yeah, some people die, but people aren't getting like buried, right? What do? They climb up to the highest spot because humans are what? We have intelligence, and we usually do everything in our power to like take us long.
Even animals do that.
Well, I'm saying animals do it too, but the same logic can apply to a lot of the animals, right? Like, why are all the smaller animals lower in the fossil record? Well, hello, bacteria and insects aren't exactly going to be able to like make it. they have a much shorter.
They don't have legs,
right? Well, they might have legs, but they can't go very far, right? Like, whoa, hey Wesley, major feedback coming through, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
By the way, Wesley, you've been being very quiet. Anything you want to interject?
As far as like where fossils are located, you mean?
I want to know why you guys think. Yeah, tell them, John.
Whatever, you can. Anything that's on your mind. We're just putting you on the spot now. You've been being quiet.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, sorry, I actually accidentally muted you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. I have the 2 books by Andrew Snelling, The Earth's Catastrophic Past. He goes through some of the reasons for fossil distribution, and I think the 90s, chapter 90 or something.
Do you have it there? Are you looking it up?
Yeah, 1 second.
I'm curious what you guys think too. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, what I say is to me, the hierarchy of types of animals in the fossil record, if there is a flood, if the flood is true, then the hierarchy makes total sense to me. It actually seems like common sense. I mean, who would have thought that the mammals and large reptiles would have taken longer to drown? I mean, like, no, who would have ever thought this? Like, let's think about this. Put them there was a giant tub, like a giant pool, and you have ants and a bunch of other insects, some spiders, and different things. It's a wave pool, and they get which ones are going to last the longest in the amount of water that's coming in. Like, this is not that difficult to comprehend,
Well, some are going to be consumed, aren't they? If they're predatory animals, some are going to be consumed, right? Like crocodile stuff will be at the bottom, and they can survive down there for hours, so they'll just be feeding off the rest.
Well, any in the fossil record are going to be.
I mean, like this is just a spanner in the works. Sorry.
So I found it's called it's on page 733 of the second book. It's called Hydrodynamic Selectivity of Moving Water. It's in that section. And he goes through a few different processes, like early burial of marine creatures, etc. but here he says another factor tending to ensure the deposition of the supposedly simple marine organisms in the first deposited strata, now deep in the geologic record, is the hydrodynamic selectivity of moving water for particles of similar sizes and shapes, together with the effect of special gravity of the respective organisms. The so-called impact law states the settling velocity of large particles is independent of fluid viscosity. It is directly proportional to the square root of particle diameter, directly proportional to particle sphericity. Sphericity, yeah, and directly proportional to the difference between particle and fluid density divided by fluid density. So that's impact law. And then he says, these criteria are derived from consideration of hydrodynamic forces acting on immersed bodies and are well established. Moving water or moving particles in still water exerts drag forces on those bodies, which depends on the above quoted factors. Particles in motion will tend to settle out in proportion mainly to their specific gravity or density and sphericity. It is significant that the marine organisms fossilized in the earliest flood strata, such as the trilobites, brachiopods, etc., are very streamlined and quite dense. The shells of these and most other marine invertebrates are largely composed of calcium carbonate, calcium phosphate, and similar minerals, which are quite heavy, heavier than quartz. For example, the most common constituent of many sands and gravels. This factor alone would have exerted a highly selective sorting action, not only tending to deposit the simpler, that is, the more spherical and undifferentiated organisms first in the sediments as they were being deposited, but also tending to segregate particles of similar sizes and shapes, which could have thus formed distinct faunal stratigraphic horizons with the complexity of structure and deposited organisms, even of similar kinds, increasing progressively upward in the accumulating sediments. So that's part of what he says.
What about you, Sal? What do you think? Do you think it's more of a problem for a young Earth worldwide flood model, or for an old Earth, just deep time with the higher populations of humans over the whole span?
I think both sides need to be a little bit more, just a little bit more circumspect. We don't have as much data and experiments as we would need. We've been trying to do what they call a flume experiments. So there are any number of experiments and observations in theory that still needs to be better developed. And so I'm a little bit more willing to say I accept some things on faith, and partly that faith is based on how bad the other side is falling apart. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods. So I do get a little concerned when I hear the young Earth creationists saying they've solved this problem, and it's obvious that, there's not uniform agreement among all creationists. So I think what I had said on Saturday night when I talked about good and bad arguments for young Earth creationism, I feel that there's still some complications with this stratigraphy, the layers for explaining the distribution of fossils. But what I said is that's way easier than trying to solve abiogenesis or eukaryotic evolution or the other problems with an old Earth or old solar system. So I'm like, okay, right now, I certainly wouldn't want to be on the other side. I'd sooner think the young Earth creationists have a better chance of solving it definitively, the stratigraphy problem, than abiogenesis ever being solved, or eukaryotic evolution being solved, or many evolutionary transitions, or protein evolution. So, or like the chemical dates show youth. The soft tissues show youth. And they're just working around this. I said, if they're just a little bit more open, I think it'd be a different day, but the dialogue's being shut down. Same for the Big Bang Theory. I combed through hour 45 minutes today on the Big Bang Theory, and Andrew Cumming here is demanding that I explain it in the side chat. I said, why don't you look at it? And he said, why don't you summarize? I said, why don't you look? Because this is really complicated. And he said, I won't, do you want to talk about this? Or you game? I said, dude, I think you're being an uncivil tone. You want to talk in about an hour? I will, but I won't be so nice this time around because I sense some hostility here. So,
Well, at this point, it's rather obvious that Andrew is unfortunately becoming the stereotypical college kid who is getting aggressively brainwashed and told that everything is just, it's been solved and we have all this stuff and nobody's ever questioning it. Nobody's actually, and it's like there is a plethora of theories other than the Big Bang, the standard conventional Big Bang model. I mean, they're at the freaking wazoo. Yeah. And there's so many people that are challenging the conventional paradigm. Not necessarily in the not in the undergraduate textbooks, they're not. No. But there's plethoras of papers that are being published on it and different challenges being put forth to the different models and stuff. And it's like this whole like, oh, the consensus, like, yeah, okay, there's a consensus that's being put forth in the fucking undergraduate textbooks. I agree. You're right. But there's a lot of challenges that are happening to all sorts of things. It's just, anyway.
Yeah. And I read graduate level stuff. Okay. I've studied general relativity. I've studied cosmology. I studied quantum mechanics. I studied astrophysics, studied plasma physics. This stuff is relevant. This stuff is not easy. And he's wanting me to explain it in the side chat, what my views are. And, I just want to say, Andrew, why do you waste time on some channel, some guy who's dropped out of high school, burned his brains out on drugs and alcohol, and he's claiming to be qualified to criticize what I have to say? This cuts both ways. If you're going to criticize James Tour for not studying abiogenesis, this applies to people that don't have the same level of qualifications as I do, if they're going to criticize me. So,
but you Christians just make stuff up.
I'm not nice if you keep that attitude. Sorry. Because I invited you to look at this. You could waste 2 more hours on evolutionary garbage, or you could actually watch my hour and 45-minute talk on this, where I just read a scientific paper by a respected astronomer. Show a little courtesy. Jeez.
Tell him, Sal. You tell him. Wesley, were you trying to say something? Wesley?
Oh yeah, I was gonna comment on like Sal's criticism of like the geology being certain. I might have stopped too early because he just says it's quite possible that this could have been one of the major processes. That's his next sentence. He's not saying like definitively that any of these processes are what caused this. He's just saying like these are processes that happen and they could have been factors in this. Because we don't know for certain, obviously.
Well, because and to Sal's point, in line with what you're saying, Wesley, and to Sal's point about what things are more likely to have an alternative explanation, the fossil record, stratification, etc., or the solving the abiogenesis problem. Like, which one is more plausible to have an alternative explanation than the conventional paradigm, right? And it's like to me, it's for example purposes, I reread. Oh, by the way, for everybody who's in the side chat and who listens to this later, The Stairway to Life now has an audiobook version, and which I purchased and have been. I read the book and I'm re-listening to it in audio format. And so it's kind of interesting listening to it on the audio version. I've actually picked up on some things I had missed reading the book normally. Anyway, where I was going with all that is in relation to the improbability stuff. Like that book is just an utter obliteration of the standard talking points. It just completely annihilates and put them into such context, right? Of like, what is plausible in these discussions? And it really just fascinates me how people just gloss over this stuff so much. I mean, Dr. Tor says it so well, right? Like they're just completely eliminating the plausibility. I mean, use that word, right? Like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, all of our experiments, we got a yield that was in freaking equivalent of asphalt. It's just a bunch of tar. But hey, we found 0.003% of the freaking molecule we did. So hey, this worked. Now let's start off our next experiment with 100% of X, and it's going to be purified. It's going to be, it's going to have the chirality taken care of, or it's going to be activated. Whatever different things are doing, and we're going to start with, a very concentrated mix of this
Right.
stuff in all the right forms.
When the
Even
last
though-
experiment would have decayed all those things and they wouldn't have had any of it, in like
exactly. And it's
hours.
like, oh, cool. So, yeah, if you mix these two things in like the proper order, and for reactions 2 and 3, you hold it steady at 100 degrees, and then you wash out some stuff, and then for reactions 7, 8, and 9, you lower the temperature to 36, and then you stick it in the refrigerator for 2 days, and then you have a UV light on it for 12 minutes and 32 seconds. Then we're able to get XYZ reaction to happen. And it's like, oh, holy crap, this is totally reasonable from a prebiotic perspective. What are you talking about here? And then people that call them out on this kind of stuff, it's like, you're unqualified to have an opinion on this. And it's like, yeah, okay, so let's extrapolate that to the macro view. And if somebody applied the same logic to like baking a cake and appropriate temperatures, spinning for a certain amount of time, heat it for X, no longer than, then you cool it off before you put the icing on, that kind of stuff. And be like, anybody who claims it's not plausible for the freaking cake mix it's in the box to ever magically turn into iced cake is somehow unqualified in relation to whether or not this is plausible. I mean, it's just like, anyway, get out of town.
Yeah, and just to go back to the original question, the other question I like to ask is, how did we know that the Earth was fully populated? And if it wasn't fully populated, where were the areas that were fully populated, and how the hell were they keeping records?
Yeah. Well, and Jamie, you got chiral pulled up now. Sal talks about this all the time too, and brings this up. But the whole like chiral induced spin selectivity is like a whole. You have the chirality problem, and then what we're discovering about chiral induced spin selectivity it does a variety of things, but one of the things it does is exponentially necessitates chirality in order for life to exist. Like you can't, because of course, one of the standard talking points, oh, things didn't always have to be homochiral, it's not that big a deal, it can just happen over time, blah 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, so maybe not. And then chiral induced spin selectivity, what we're discovering about it is just, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, Sal, based on your knowledge of it, but from what I've read, it seems to me that chiral induced spin selectivity just creates a greater necessity for the homochirality and mitigates the plausibility of the chirality not having to be homochiral and just can that can slowly happen over a couple million years, kind of thing. That's just
there are numerous reasons. Chiral
induced spin selectivity.
Chiral induced spin, CISS. Chiral induced spin selectivity is only one of the necessary benefits. Basic ability to, so for chirality in amino acids, there's certain rotations that, it's kind of like having left screws going into right-handed holes or vice versa. It just doesn't work. A lot of the connections would fail, but that's even understating the problem. If you're flipping things, you're not going to be able to have stable folds. This is just like biochemistry 201. You won't get far in a biochemistry textbook and you don't see that fact. You could see that the folds will fail. You won't. So even if you have some sort of genetic code and you're coding amino acids, if the amino acids are not homochiral, you're stuck. It's dead. And Rob Stadler pointed out, like, for example, insulin, definitely, you flip the chirality of even one amino acid, it's gone. It's gone. So
is that because of the way it pairs up, or exactly
no,
it's that it can't?
No, it's just the way that it turns. So it's just like changing the threads of a screw going from right to left in the middle of you're not going to be able to use it anymore, because there's a lot of that where, and this would be like changing, if you had a mix of it, it's like changing the screw to clockwise, counterclockwise, the threading back and forth, and it'd just be a disaster. It's going to be unusable.
Well, and so to your point there, I would say it'd almost be like, just using one screw as an example, right? So let's say you have a 3-inch screw, and the first 1/4 inch is right to left, the threading is, and then the next inch is the opposite direction, right? Like, and you're sitting there trying to screw this thing in, and then the threading starts going the opposite direction halfway up the screw. I mean, you got a problem. Like, it's not going to be, now you might, with enough pressure, you might be able to drill it in, but it's still not.
It's more extreme that it can't work, right? I mean, and it isn't part of that issue that they, when they're produced naturally, you get a mix of either kind or something like that. Is that right?
And it's worse than that. Even if you started out homochiral, it's going to generally decay to be heterochiral, and when it becomes half and half, it's what they call racemic. So I could share my screen just for a little bit here, see if I have it.
I just think it's good to define some of these things sometimes, because for the audience sake.
Understand it. So even, they keep talking about, like, we can make it homochiral. It's like, how long will that last? In a hydrothermal vent under heat, I'm just like, that's why I laugh at this hydrothermal vent hypothesis. It's gonna,
time is an enemy, right?
Huh?
Time doesn't help you. It makes it worse.
Time's going to destroy the chirality. So I'm just going to show the kind of this alpha helix here. You can see how it has that certain turn. That turn, proteins have a lot of these alpha helices. If you switch the chirality, this is just blown away. It's going to blow away the protein. Same probably for the beta sheets and any number of structures. It's gone. So let's say you happen to have a working helicase that just happened to pop up naturally once. You try to duplicate the recipe with a heterochiral mix, forget it. I mean, it's just going to be a disaster. So that's just illustrating for the audience here why the chirality on that level is important. And then, as LPP pointed out, and really James Tour, the chiral-induced spin selectivity is just another factor. He's pointing out, like our brain that operates at 10 watts without chiral-induced spin selectivity would require a megawatt, gigawatt power station. It's just incredible. They're just things like that optimal in biology. That's why I'd say, you think the young Earth creationists have problems, look at the abiogenesis guys. And then next on the list would be the eukaryotic evolution guys. I'm just like, yeah, forget it. I'd rather take our side.
Can you imagine what the screw would look like if it had to be designed? And the process it would have to go through to be designed, then to have its design changed.
It doesn't seem plausible to me that the amount of energy our brain consumes, that it would be a necessity for survival of the population to have such a massive, intense concentration on the brain for what you would get out of it, considering how you could survive without it in the wild, like other primates, let's say. that seems like just a huge leap. That's, to me, it just strikes me that way. I don't know a lot about it, but same kind of thing.
The fact that we're getting dumber and dumber. This is suggesting that natural selection would not favor it. I mean, we have empirical evidence. That's the thing. You look at observations in the present, it doesn't favor the idea that Darwinian selection constructs complexity and preserves it. There's a slight tendency to degrade it over time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Seems to make sense anyway to me.
And it's a testable hypothesis. We'll find out.
So it
Thank you, sir.
Looks like Andrew has joined us. What's up, Andrew?
Ew.
Anyways, all about LPP. So I'll say ciao.
Right on. Good to see you, man. Have a good night.
See you around.
Is it daytime for you or nighttime? Let's see. Oh, he's gone. So I think Wesley, are you? You're seeming weird tonight. Are you okay?
Me? Yeah, I'm fine.
Good.
No, not other Wesley.
Okay.
Hi.
What's up, Wesley? Are you seem like you're in rare form tonight. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Living in an apartment in Huntington, West Virginia now.
Okay, you moved from Chicago. Okay. Well, that's good. Are you everything going okay?
Yeah, it's going fine. Going great. I'll come and visit every one of you soon.
Okay, so why are you saying that God is the devil?
Those aren't my words.
Well, is Omni? You say Omni is 666. So are you saying that the devil is the ultimate?
Well, as a teacher, I think you should know that it's coming. It's a branding of the flesh of a barcode, and it'll be called the Omni. If you want to get one, you're going to get one. I suggest you don't.
Oh yeah, well I'm definitely not going to in that context. I agree with you that it's coming. I mean, it's definitely on the way for sure. There's no doubt about it. It's being publicly stated that that's the objectives of the World Economic Forum and such. It's quite. I believe the words were. The future is surveillance under your skin. I believe was the direct quote.
Well, it won't be an implant. It will be actually branding. There'll be a sort of a white, slightly L-shaped device that has at its point a black square on which a laser printer emanates. And it is Wi-Fi connected to a phony account that everyone that gets the Omni will get an account of $32,000 in cryptocurrency. And you won't be allowed to buy or sell anything without it.
Interesting. Well, I will.
You won't be allowed to. You won't be allowed to enter a store to buy anything without being branded with a UPC code. You'll be made a product.
Something to just keep in mind that's in scripture regarding this issue. And I'm not saying that they won't have barcodes that they put on you or something or a way to track you. I'm not saying that that won't happen. But something just to know from scripture is that if you read verse 6 through 8, look at this, particularly verse 8 there. Thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. This is the commands of God. Also, real quick, just something to keep in mind. Is Exodus, same thing here. Here's two witnesses.
Moses and Elijah, yeah.
No,
I don't know if Elijah or Elijah, but it's one of those two.
Let's see. Right there, verse 9. This is talking about what you do is the work of your hands, and what you think or believe is this idea of on your forehead. So the idea is worship God, don't worship the beast.
True. The word YHWH, man cannot pronounce it with his tongue. And those that have said Yahweh or Yahweh, trying to say that that's the name of the father of Jesus, they err. YHWH means God is. So YHWH Jesus means God is Jesus.
All right. Okay, so I don't want Andrew to have an excuse to on the next weather report.
Oh, one other important weather report, if I may. I'm sorry to interrupt. The Chinese submarines, there's about 32 of them, are on the way to the West Coast at this very time, as are the Russian submarines, not as many to the East Coast. One of those Chinese submarines, Jesus will give me a prayer to stop them. And then they're going to attack America, and they're going to bomb the state capitals. So,
well, interesting.
They're not going to.
I mean, at that point, the Chinese or the Russians or both doing EMP blasts over the United States is not that far out of the
nuclear bombs, fires, destroying the state capitals. They're in a secret joint pact. While in the media they promote themselves as being separate, not really being together. In secret, they have agreed to destroy the United States of America, and they're on the way now.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and their first attack will be on all of the governments, all the capitals, the Washington D.C., all the state capitals, to destroy the chain of command.
Well, I would say if Sal didn't live so close to DC, I would say go ahead and wipe out the swamp that is DC. But
yeah,
Sal's a little bit. But Wesley, hang on. But I'm going to try and be like Abraham in relation to Sodom and Gomorrah. If there be but one righteous, will you spare DC? And since Sal is in the metro area of Washington D.C., Lord, please, for the one righteous man still in D.C., please don't allow the nukes to wipe them out just yet. Send in the angels, Father, to extract Brother Sal from the swamp that is DC, and then after let the hellfire rain down on and take out the majority of it's just at this point DC needs to be eradicated.
Strange enough, in Ezekiel there is a wheel in a wheel that is the color of beryl, and a fire enfolding in itself, and 4 angels with the face of a man, an ox, an eagle, and a lion. Strange enough, those 4 angels are 4 young men on the earth in the flesh. The wings that go up means that they're in heaven as angels with the white robes and the long brass trumpet and the harps. On earth, they are in the flesh, and the wheel in the wheel is a nuclear bomb that they built and introduced it into a green Volvo station wagon. I have met those angels, and I have seen that car, and it shall be parked at Marina City, the corn cob buildings next to the Chicago River in downtown Chicago. It'll be parked there, and that is the revenge of Jesus Christ. He is the one that's actually going to set that thing and make sure that it detonates. And from that point on, it all begins at that time.
Honestly, I don't think that Jesus is going to be setting off car bombs in Chicago. Okay,
so well, you didn't. How's those 2 healed teeth in your mouth?
Okay, yeah. So we're going to be
quantum physics about that.
Okay, Wesley. We're going to be wrapping up here in just a moment. So I wanted to give Andrew a chance to say what he wants to say before we wrap up. So Andrew, is there something you joined the stream? So is there something you wanted to bring up?
I was just gonna have a talk with Sal, but if you're wrapping up soon, then I don't see a real point in it.
I'm done with I was able to effect transfer. So if you want to go to my channel, I can set something up. I just needed to make sure I had your right email. So I'll email you the link to my channel. We could continue talking there if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Might be iffy about the time right now, though. It's kind of getting late over here. But we
Okay.
can definitely set something
Do
up soon.
you guys want to talk for a few minutes and then we'll call it a night?
I'll go ahead and set something up right now, and because it's going to take me a while it'll take me 5-10 minutes to get it all set up. And I'll send you an email, and if you want to join, you can. Otherwise, that's all right. So I don't want to disrupt the conversation here. But LPP, it's great seeing you, man.
You too, brother.
It's been a lot of fun, and I almost every night I think, gee, I wonder if he's going to have a show. I'd love to talk to him.
Well, I'm trying to get a little more. Well, so I think before you go, I mean, what do you think about how close we came to being able to have a conversation with the head of MIT biology? I mean, what do you think about the opportunity that was missed out on? I mean, I'm feeling a little bit of a loss. How about you?
Oh yeah. Oh man, we came so close.
I mean, and so we also missed out, ladies and gentlemen, we missed out on education from the head of MIT biology on the RNA world hypothesis. I mean, we came so close. I mean, within a smidgen of having any and all leanings towards, I mean, toss YEC, OEC out the window. I mean, even intelligent design, we're removing any kind of theistic implications from the equation, was about to be obliterated tonight. But if only he would have showed up. I mean, I just don't know what to tell you. I feel like we missed out. How do you feel about that, Andrew? Do you feel like we all you just missed out on the utter obliteration of all things ID, YEC, OEC, creationism? Just got, just dodged a bullet tonight. How do you feel about that, Andrew?
Well, I guess I would say that if it dodged a bullet, it's been dodging a lot of bullets recently.
So you think that the RNA world bullet has not been dodged in actuality? You think it's actually circling back around?
Like in relation to abio issues? I guess I don't really have any comments on that. I'm too ill-informed.
So are you continuing to still be willfully uninformed on that topic?
On abiogenesis specifically?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm looking into some topics and others. I can't look into possibly every single topic.
Well,
there are some that interest me more than others.
So which ones interest you?
I guess more the mechanistic side of things, if you want to call it that, and well, I mean astronomy, things of that nature. Not really more so the origin of things per se.
Okay, so are you saying that from a cosmology perspective as well as a bio standpoint, you're not really interested in the root? You only want to look at the outcome versus the root cause. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I'm interested in the things we know so far, and if that happens to grow over time, then I'll look into that as well. I know that these issues are by no means resolved right now, so they don't happen to interest me in that way, I guess.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are operating from a position that it's worthwhile to not really address the tree from which a theory comes, or the roots of it. You just want to look at the branches.
Well, I mean, if you're saying that evolutionary theory is based on abiogenesis, then I'd probably disagree, but I'm not really going to get into that here.
Okay, well, I was talking about the root. So you're suggesting that that evolution is not fundamentally founded and necessitates abio being true?
I don't see why it would. I mean, you could have theistic evolution accounts some people hold to. You can have God create the world and then evolution is how he did it. I don't particularly see a problem with that, at least from a conceptual standpoint.
So, are you a theistic evolutionist then?
No, by no means.
Then how do you defend your abiogenesis view?
Well, I don't necessarily have any views on abiogenesis either. I'm just a what's a good way of putting it? I guess just unconcerned with it at the moment until further evidence comes in.
So, Andrew, what's your opinion on like the pair fatality problem?
The what? Sorry.
So, like when they're doing knockout experiments, right? So, if I knock out gene A, the organism doesn't die. Or if I knock out gene B, the organism doesn't die. But if I knock out A and B, it does die.
I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, genes interact with each other, so.
Right. So it wouldn't. So from the essential gene perspective, right? We say, I can get rid of A or B, therefore they're not essential. But then if you knock out both of them, then the organism dies. So that would actually mean that they're both essential from a macro point of view, right?
I guess you could say that they're essential in combination. Like you could have epistatic factors involved.
Well, no, okay, but if you didn't, unless you're having both of them appear at the same time, right? Then eventually, if you don't have both, or sorry, if you don't have at least one, then you're toast, right?
Okay, sorry, repeat that one more time.
Never mind. It's too late to get into this. Don't worry about it. We'll deal with it.
Sorry, my brain is fried right now. I came in to talk cosmology, not that stuff.
That's right. What's up, Angela? How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Yes, hello guys. Well, I'm sleepless, so that's why I'm here right now.
I just sent Rational Empiricist an email. I'm going to sign off so I could join him for at least a few minutes on my channel. Tangela, great seeing you. Wesley. And as always, John, nice seeing you.
Appreciate you. Good to see you too, so have a great night, brother.
Good night.
So you're not sleeping, Tangelo? You having...
I slept earlier on the sofa, and when I wake up, then I can't sleep anymore. So it's almost 3 a.m. here where I am. So.
Your sleep schedule has been jacked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I wanted to share something with you. I was recently elucidating each single protein in the biosynthesis pathway of chlorophyll, since this is such a life essential molecule, and if we don't have photosynthesis, we don't have advanced life. So I am trying to dig really deep into that. And the last 7 biosynthesis steps, the proteins, they are not encountered in any other biosynthesis pathway. So they cannot be co-opted, right? And the interesting thing is that if you don't regulate the synthesis of chlorophyll, what happens? If you have too much of the product and also the intermediate product, then the cell dies, because then you have ROS. These are reactive oxygen species. This is a byproduct which intoxicates the cell. So you cannot have too much of the intermediate products and also of chlorophyll itself. You need to have just the right amount. Now, if you don't have enough synthesized, you don't have photosynthesis. The entire process doesn't work either. So this is the existence of the cell is dependent on the regulation of the biosynthesis pathway. So what does that mean? That the mechanisms of regulation, they have to be there right from the beginning. So you don't need to have only the biosynthesis pathway itself fully operational, but you need to have the regulation of the product also right there from the beginning. And that, of course, is a big problem for evolution, because you need to account for both systems, for the biosynthesis pathway and the regulation. And what I am saying here, that isn't just the case in regards of that biosynthesis pathway, but also, for example, the synthesis of amino acids or nucleotides or other building blocks is all regulated.
Interesting. Yeah, the things that you're pointing out here, it's the chicken and egg problem.
Yeah.
It's just it's over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
what drives me up the wall about this stuff is supposedly the chicken and egg problems are all solved by, oh, there was some other way that doesn't currently exist now that was the other part of the either the egg or the chicken.
Yeah, so
And
that's basically
it doesn't exist
evolution.
now. It doesn't exist now. We don't see it anywhere.
Yeah.
This is the chicken and egg. You have to have both of them at the same time. We agree that right now you do, but there was always some other. It's like, okay, so at this point, we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of chicken and egg problems. And
well, the thing
they
is,
have all magically been solved. And to me, who is relying more on the magic? the person who believes in intelligent agency or undirected process? I mean,
what you are pointing out, John, is precisely, I am always talking about naturalism of the gaps, but you are pointing out the evolution of the gaps. We don't know how it happened, but evolution did it.
Yep. Well, and here's the thing, man. This is what's really been, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, of this whole environmental pressures and getting from living in the ocean to somehow making it on land and vice versa, right? I'm just going to go out on a limb and gamble that you could dump every single human on the planet into the Pacific Ocean, and not a single one of them would magically be able to breathe underwater. Therefore, all billion would drown. I mean, like, barring, somehow surviving to get back on land, it doesn't matter how many you put into the environmental pressure of, oh crap, we're going to drown because we're dumped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Like, you're going to drown,
right,
or get eaten. Like, there's no way you're going to grow gills. Like,
even like a tadpole. Put that in the middle of the ocean.
But you know what is funny, John? That whatever problem that we encounter in regards of explaining the origin of this or that, you see that materialists, they come up with any kind of explanation. It doesn't matter how silly it is, and it is supposed that we believe them. I give you an example. We know that you don't need only natural selection. I mean, natural selection is supposed effect in biology, but you need also the selection of the basic building blocks of life in regards to start life. And you need also the right selection of the physical parameters to have a stable universe filled with atoms and molecules. So I was recently in a Facebook group about naturalism, and then someone linked me to a YouTube video of Lee Smolin. And what is his genius proposal that there was natural selection in physics? So basically that the universe did select the right physical constants and parameters to permit atoms and in the end molecules and life.
So the non-conscious universe was able to foresee the required laws and forces that were necessary for life to exist.
Now, his
without
narrative is this, that there were, prior to our universe, there were other universes which produced stars. These stars, they collapsed into a black hole, and that black hole then was seeding singularities and then started baby universes. Think about the fertile imagination of a mainstream physicist.
yeah, the baby universes, the bubble universes, like and the crashing into each other models, and I mean those types of what really irritates me about those models, and when they're put forth as a workaround for why you don't need the preceding intelligent agent, what irritates me about that, it's like, okay, so even if that is true, you still haven't circumvented the perpetual motion machine problem.
Exactly.
So unless you are solving that problem, you've done nothing but kick the can.
Well, and the beautiful thing here is as well, John, that he presupposes stars, but stars he himself, Lee Smolin, he has a book from 1992, and he says, in order to have stars, the fine-tuning and the parameters, the odds are 1 to 10 to the 209th power. So in order to have a situation where you have evolution of the universe, where the parameters are fine-tuned, you need to presuppose already a fine-tuned universe.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean...
Right. Yeah. Well, to me, the whole deal, all the... Let's just be honest, guys. At this point, when you look at things from the cosmology perspective to the biology standpoint to the moral, like the cosmological arguments, the biological arguments, and the morality arguments, all of those, in my opinion, leave you without excuse in relation to, at a minimum, God exists. Whether or not you want to decide on the Christian God, the Allah, whatever, is irrelevant. A God exists. God is necessary in order for me to exist. Can be easily concluded from those arguments, right? And from there, if you're refusing to do so, then you're just living in a fantasy land of desperation to avoid the obvious. There's no way around it. And it is a willful rejection of accountability to a higher power. That's what it boils down to. You're being a angry juvenile rebel who doesn't want to concede that they are not the ultimate. That's it. That's where you're at. Like either God exists. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with all like the presuppositional stuff. I know like Sam and Darth Dawkins and Darth obviously loves that way more. And I think Sam has some fun with it. But like, I know you had a stint with Darth there for a while, Angelo, and I like a lot of stuff that Darth says, and I don't necessarily think that you have to, that presuppositionalism is the only way to go, right? But I agree. But however, I agree at the end of the day, whether you come at it from a presuppositionalist perspective or you look at the evidence and ultimately conclude the same thing, right? That, the ultimate being is necessary. Like it is necessary. Whether you get there from looking at the evidence and the laws and the all those different things I was talking about, right? Or you start from there and extrapolate out. Either way, you end up with the same conclusion, which is the ultimate must exist.
Yeah, I like Darth, and even if atheists constantly they rant about him and so forth, but I have learned some things interacting with him, and but coming back what you said previously, John, you remember that famous quote from Dobansky. He says that nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. All right. And I use that to modify it a little bit. And I say nothing in physics, chemistry, and biology makes sense except in the light of creation by an intelligent, powerful, conscious God.
I would agree with that. Yeah. So much of this stuff, is and you do this even more than I do in terms of going down the intricacies of the biochemical pathways and all these different intricate components that are required, right? I like things more on. I like learning about this stuff, but also like the conceptual aspects of how they interact and stuff. At the slightly like 1 or 2 layers above, and to me, it's like the more you learn, the more we discover. The point you're making just gets proven more and more like beyond doubt. You know, like there is just no way that this is plausible to have occurred without a brilliant preceding agent, like intelligent agent. It's just
Absolutely.
it's not plausible if you look at it from the big picture. Like, oh, it just happened in small little pieces over exorbitant, these extraordinary amounts of time. And I'm like, I don't know how many times I have to tell you people, especially like the atheist side debate, right? Like, you want to come at me from the YEC perspective? Okay, that's fine. I'm questioning your model on your timeline. Like, are you not paying attention? Like, I don't give a rat's ass if you have 4.54 billion years to work with. It's still not plausible. With that much time, it's not plausible. Either way, it's not rational to think that this type of technology can create itself. I'm sorry, it's just not. And especially now, and you've heard me diatribe about this many times with Angela, now that humans are doing bioengineering, and we are recognizing how complicated and ridiculously difficult it is to create something functional, and we have extraordinary amounts of observable evidence in our computer, like these big compartmentalized into our computer systems. Like, we know so much, right? And we can't create some of the most baseline functions. Like, the things that we're engineering are a joke compared to nature. Like, so you don't think that the things that we're creating in the lab could ever create themselves, but you do think the thing that you're trying to copy did. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. Unless we were created. And then, to your point, if you're operating from the perspective that everything that we observe is evidence in favor of the creator, then so be like, sweet. Let's do some reverse engineering and try and figure it out. But other than that, nah. But okay, so
you know what is beautiful in physics, John, is this: that when you investigate, then you come down to the bottom of reality. And when you come down to the bottom, then there is nothing else which grounds the basic numbers which make up the universe. And for example, in regards of atoms, there are about 30 parameters. And these parameters, they are numbers which are inserted in equations, and you can only discover these numbers. But these numbers, they are not grounded in anything deeper. And if you don't have these numbers, if they are not the right numbers, then you don't have stable atoms. So the fact that you cannot ground them in anything deeper, and they could have these numbers, they could have any other different number, which then would be non-functional, of course, constitutes a huge problem for naturalists because they have no explanation. And Lee Smolin, he comes up with natural selection of these numbers and say, well, it is just step by step and so forth. But these are just made up fantasy explanations which do not withstand scrutiny. They are just made up. And the universe doesn't care if it is life producing or not. Molecules, they have no foresight. And this is very powerful evidence for creation. The fact that there has to be selection, not only on a biology level, but in special and foremost as well in a biochemistry level and in a physics level. This is a huge problem. And I was recently in a Discord stream with Xerxes and all these hardcore atheists. And I said, hey, this is checkmate for naturalism. But they simply put it away. They don't care because they don't want to know what really is the truth. They just want to keep their zombie worldview alive.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, so Angelo. Okay, guys, we're coming up on 3 hours. My butt is going to go to bed. Otangelo needs to, so by the way, folks, Otangelo claimed that he fell asleep on the couch. I think he actually needs to go and back and apologize to his wife, because that was the real reason he was sleeping on the couch. I'm kidding. I don't actually think that Otangelo's put on the couch, but I couldn't resist. So, guys, before we wrap up, Wesley, you got any last word?
John, I did put here 2 links in the private chat. You can put, if you want, you can put it in the public chat. There are 2 very good abiogenesis science papers, and the authors, they are Christians, but they make points which are constant talking points of yours, and you should read the papers. They are awesome.
Yeah, I pulled those up. Did I not give you a? You don't have a wrench?
Let me check. Oh yes, I'll put them outside.
I'm about to copy. I'm about to. I already did one. I'm about to do the other one. I was just like, man, did I not give you a wrench? I could have sworn I did.
Yeah, I have a wrench. I just didn't look.
No, you're good, man. I was just making sure that I hadn't. I had cleared some off because I had some spammers or whatever, and I was just making sure I hadn't forgotten. I accidentally cleared you off. But yeah, I was looking at those titles. That's information-driven systems and organic cells. That looks pretty interesting. I was kind of perusing through the a natural origin of life. Every hypothetical step appears thwarted by abiogenic randomization. That looks like an interesting read right there.
Well, if you just see the second paper, the conclusion, just quick here, you will like it. Let me check here.
This is a long paper.
Yeah, just read it. Okay. This paper has plausibly demonstrated how unsuppressed, unbiased scientific observation leads to a being with the characteristics of God as the source of the physical life we see around us. I mean, this is a paper which would never go through peer review because he concludes God as the best explanation.
Yep. Well, it's
Science wouldn't even look at it.
No, you're right. It's interesting how inference to the best explanation applies in every other aspect of science except for our existence.
Yeah. And God is excluded a priori because he cannot be tested, right?
Hey, real quick, guys, before we go to bed. So Ray has told us earlier his grandson is in the hospital. So he says, good night and God bless everyone. Please pray for my grandson, Caleb. He will be in the hospital for 4 or 5 days and he has diabetes. So let's make sure to pray for Ray's grandson, Caleb, that the doctors will be able to give him the right treatment and he will be able to overcome these issues and whatever the things that are being put forth, or the potential negatives that are happening right there. And hey, Brett, I just saw you backstage. If you wanted to hop in for a second and say what's up before we wrap up. I saw you backstage. If you want to come back in, I was about to grab you. Wes, you got anything you want to say?
No, not really. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. God bless,
Of course, same to you, man. Angelo, any last words before we wrap up?
No, thanks for having me, John. It's always good to be at your channel. And see you next time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for these papers. I look forward to reading these.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out. I'm sorry that we were unable to have the conversation with the head of MIT's biology department. And Otangelo, in case you're wondering if that's actually true, you should skip to the beginning. There's a reason for this. It's pretty funny. But as you consider things that we talked about tonight, as you do your own research, as you consider the fundamental necessities for your existence, make sure whatever conclusion you reach when it comes down to what is necessary for your existence, make sure your conclusion is logical, plausible, and probable. Have a good night, everybody.